Little Mix single-handedly kickstarted the girl group revival in the 2010s. Winning X Factor in 2011, 4 girls from the UK led to a girl group renaissance. Perhaps the perfect pop recipe. Bubblegum enough, but tight harmonies and strong individual voices. From hits like Wings, Black Magic, Shout Out to My Ex, and Touch, they are one of the longest lasting girl groups. And after one member split and a hiatus was announced for the group officially in 2022, they've sought to find their own identity through their solo careers. Some not so successfully to the point of outrage, and others finding slow but sure success. And although they saw major success in Europe and other music markets, they never fully popped off in the US. Perhaps was it sabotage at the hands of their label? From seeking creative freedom to dealing with cyberbullying, dating lives exploited, blackfishing allegations, roped into Nicki and Cardi's feud, and drama amongst the girls once Jesy left. Despite its chaos, Little Mix has been around for a very long time. So what happened to Little Mix? What's their story? And what does their future look like individually and as a group? Let's talk. Hey guys, it's your girl Cameron, and I'm back at it again with another video. And today we are going to be talking about what happened to Little Mix. Yes, another installment in my What Happened To series. So today's subject is Little Mix, my friends. This has been highly requested, especially after my Fifth Harmony video that I did months and months and months ago. And transparently, being a girl from the US, really did not know much about Little Mix outside of their major releases. And so I went down a rabbit hole, and here we are today. This is probably going to be my longest video ever. So pray for me, because editing is probably gonna whip me in the ass. But this is for you guys. If you look at the stats, specifically on Spotify, they're currently the 4th most listened to group on the app. And they are the 2nd most streamed girl group of all time on the Spotify app, just coming second to Blackpink. So if that doesn't say anything, for those of you guys who are like, who? Impact? Oh, we're going to talk about it. So today we're going to be going through the beginning, their time on X Factor, long career as a group, the split, the scandals, their solo careers, and where they are today. Because there's a lot to update you guys on. Make sure you grab a snack. Genuinely, I'm not even saying that to be funny. Grab something to drink. I have my coffee. If it's 5 o'clock somewhere, wherever you are in the world, get a glass of wine. Hit that subscribe button down below to keep up with my channel. And without further ado, let's get right into the video. Let's get it. So to start off, we are going to take it back to the very beginning. Little Mix is made of 4 women: Jade, Leigh-Ann, Jesy, and last but not least, Perrie. Like many girl groups, they individually went through life, right, with dreams prior to their big break. Dreams to sing, finding a way to make it big. And X Factor was that one opportunity that crossed each of their paths. So how did each and every one of them get to that point? So we're going to start with Jade Thirlwall. Was born December 26, 1992 in the UK, and she's from South Shields, which is in England. Jade is Arab, Egyptian, Yemeni on her mother's side, and English on her father's. So yes, she's multicultural, and she's also considered mixed race. But she grew up going to an Islamic school on the weekends to learn Arabic, learning to read and write, but also grew up Catholic. So that was a point of confusion for her belief system, who she was, and that's something she's somewhat suppressed her entire life, and we will talk about that a bit later. Now, in her youth, she studied pop vocals, entering local singing competitions and open mics and performing at local events. And as a teen, leading up to her X Factor debut, she also trained in dance at Steps and trained in musical theater. One thing I have to say about my UK artists, my UK girlies, is the art education is always a priority, and that's a theme we'll see with each girl here. Now, when X Factor found her, or rather she found it, she had auditioned 3 times prior to making it, okay? So her first time was when she was 15 years old in 2008, an ambitious choice with her first song selection being Where Do Broken Hearts Go by Whitney Houston. She made it to boot camps, but she did not make it to judges' houses or live shows. She then again auditioned in 2010, did not make it, And third time's a charm, because she auditioned in 2011 at just 18 years old. And this time she auditioned with I Wanna Hold Your Hand by the Beatles, making it to boot camp once again. Now the real challenge and the real pressure was, would she make it past? Now, Kelly Rowland, who was a judge on this season, did make it clear to Jade at the audition that she really saw her in a band. She saw her in a girl group.
Would actually love to see you in a girl group.
It was mainly due to Jade's shyness. She was kind of reserved on stage, and she wasn't a firecracker off of initial impression. And judges iterated that they need her to step out of her shell in order to really make an impression on the competition. And although she failed the first challenge in boot camp, she was later placed into 2 groups, but we will get there. Next we have Leigh-Ann, but she was born October 4th, 1991. She's mixed race, so half black, half white, where she grew up in a Caribbean household of Jamaican Bayesian ancestry. So from my understanding, both of her parents are mixed race. Her mom and her dad are both half black, half white, but she has Bayesian ancestry on her mother's side, and she has Jamaican ancestry on her father's side. So she grew up going to auditions and performing at school talent shows, as well as local events. And she even attended Sylvia Young Theater School, which is quite prestigious and trained famous stars like Amy Winehouse and even Dua Lipa. She only went there for a short time at the age of 11. But Leigh-Ann's older sister recalls that they used to dress up as the Spice Girls. And it's crazy to think of how full circle that would come one day. Now, prior to her X Factor debut, she was working as a part-time waitress at Pizza Hut. Yep, Pizza Hut, while also uploading videos of her music to MySpace and Facebook. And this really reminds me of a TikTok I saw recently, where singers talk about how by day they have odd jobs or non-glamorous jobs, but by night people couldn't even guess the life they live. That is truly the life of an aspiring artist, whether you're dancing, whether you are a musician. So she auditioned for X Factor's 8th season in 2011, and she sang Only Girl in the World by Rihanna, her Bayesian sister. And this girl made it clear that she wants to be a star and was very charismatic on stage too. And honestly, that's really what saved and made her audition. She did have shakier vocals, like there wasn't as much vocal stability, but she did do an impromptu a cappella song by request of the judges and sounded much clearer, much stronger, and confident. Now, Kelly Rowland also makes it clear to Leigh-Ann that she sees her in a girl group, right? So Kelly was calling it left and right. But Kelly caught herself because in the audition, Leigh-Ann did say she wanted to be the next Justin Bieber.
I want to be a pop icon. I want to be the female Justin Bieber.
Justin Bieber is a soloist. So she said, I don't know if that's going to work, but I see you in a group. So she made it through, but failed the boot camp as a soloist. And she was put in, yes, 2 groups. And we will get there. Next, we have Perrie Edwards, and she was born July 10th, fellow Cancer, 1993, and she is also from South Shields, just like Jade. And her name has some cool musical lore behind it because her parents named her after Steve Perrie, who is the lead singer in the rock band Journey. So fun fact. But Perrie was a child of divorce at a very early age, and this resulted to her moving around a lot. So she didn't have tons of stability. And as a preteen, she even moved to New Zealand for a couple years and then moved back to the UK. And she also dealt with a lot of health complications as a child and spent a lot of it going in and out of hospitals. So she had a condition called esophageal atresia. Now, I'm no medic, I'm no doctor, I'm not going to pretend like I am, but it is essentially a birth defect of the esophagus. So it made it very hard for her to eat solids, so it led to malnourishment because she wasn't eating. And she recalls the horror of her mom having to blend her food for the first 7 years of her life. So she'd have to get extensive surgeries to correct it, but growing up, she was bullied a lot for these conditions, so she really had to grow into herself and find her confidence. Similar to her bandmates, she grew up in arts education, and actually her mom is a singer. So perhaps it's in the bloodline. I don't know. But she went to Newcastle College and studied performing arts there. In 2011, Perrie was 17 when she auditioned on the X Factor, which makes her the youngest member in the group. And she sang You Ought to Know by Alanis Morissette. She had a very light energy on stage, very bubbly, but when she sang, the powerful vocals rang true. She did Ave Maria by Beyonce, a cappella. And when I tell you Kelly was stunned, she was blown away.
Whoa! crazy.
She had a beautiful tone, beautiful quality. Even though she was nervous, she crushed it. And Kelly raved about her. Unfortunately, the other judges, I don't know if their ears weren't working or they don't have taste. I don't know.
I like you. I'm not madly in love with you yet.
Nice. I didn't think it was as good as Kelly did. I thought it was...
Thank God for Kelly Rowland. That's all I can say. We know she made it to boot camp, didn't make it as a soloist, but will be put into group. And lastly, we have Jesy Nelson, or Jessica Nelson, who was born June 14th, 1991 in Rumford, London. Born to a working family, her parents also split at a very, very early age. She attended an arts college and theater school growing up, and similar to Leigh-Ann, she actually went to Sylvia Young Theater School for a short period of time. And it's even said that she was classmates with Rita Ora. So yes, this school has a pretty hefty alumni. And it was later revealed that Jesy did some extra work as a child in the film About a Boy in 2002, and she was also in Harry Potter Goblet of Fire in 2005. So she is very well intertwined with the arts, building her passion brick by brick by brick. And it's important to note that Jesy has been a victim of bullying for a large portion of her life. And she even suffered from stress-induced alopecia as a teenager because of it. Now, she worked in the service industry prior to auditioning for X Factor. She worked as what they call a barmaid for some time. And although that was a very financial period in her life, she said that singing really motivated her, and that's what pushed her to take the next step and audition for the show. She walked on that X Factor stage confident and conversational, and she sang the song Bust Your Windows by Jasmine Sullivan, and the taste, chef's kiss. If you know, you know. That's one of the greatest songs. She had spunk, she had stage presence. The judges just notated that she just needed to work on her performance skill because she wasn't as experienced performing in front of live audiences. And by the way, most of their auditions were aired either in a montage or partially. So if you watch live, let me know. However, Jesy still made it successfully to boot camp as a soloist and then moved into a group. So I think it's finally time we talk about that because I've said that 50 million times. Let's talk about X Factor. So if you somehow haven't caught it yet, Little Mix participated in the 8th season of X Factor, with judges this season being Louis Walsh, Gary Barlow, Tulisa Constavlos, and the Kelly Rowland. Okay, so it appears that the panel completely restructured season 8. So there was no more Simon Cowell. He did not judge this season because he was in the US to try to kickstart and launch X Factor US season 1. So Little Mix's journey on X Factor had different components, and it was a whirlwind to get there. Now, as mentioned, they were all successful in making the initial audition. They all made it through, but they were soloists. However, they all failed the first challenge of boot camp, and the judges gave them all another shot by putting them in groups. Kelly's premonition came through, but there's a big detail that we have to discuss. So Jade and Leigh-Ann were actually placed in a trio called Orion, while Perrie and Jesy were placed in a quartet called Faux Pas. However, both of these groups were dismantled. They didn't make it, but the judges saw the vision. They ended up putting Perrie and Jesy from their group and then taking Jade and Leigh-Ann from their respective group and putting them together to make this superstar team. And they were originally known as Rhythmics. And automatically, they were then put to the judges' house, and then they made it to live shows. And their mentor this season was Tulisa. But one thing I do have to say is for the X Factor, the vision is there. In this case, Kelly Rowland had the vision. Instead of sending people packing, they see people's potential and they put them where they see fit. Now, this may not be the most productive thing to do in the long run because you run the risk of putting people in a group who never wanted to be there and it just never fully clicks for them. I mean, during the audition, Jade scrunched her face when Kelly brought up the idea of a group.
I'd actually love to see you in a girl group, to be honest with you.
And I think Jesy low-key did too.
But I think it would also be nice to see in a girl band.
I agree with you.
Like, they weren't fond of it because obviously you go there as a soloist. If I wanted to be a group, I would have been in a group. But I like this because it keeps the dream alive. And we can deeply credit Kelly for the formation of Little Mix because in 2022, a full-length clip of Kelly Rowland almost single-handedly putting these girls together. She saw the vision and the judges followed.
And I went off my instincts, to be honest. I just saw it. And I'm so grateful that they trusted me. I'm so grateful that people also saw that video. Yeah, I put those girls together.
Now, the live shows started in October 2011. And they proceeded with the name Rhythm Mix, but not for long. They changed their name to Little Mix, and that just stuck. There was another English charity that went by Rhythm Mix, and they did not want to have any future legal issues or problems, so they just stopped that in its tracks. And based off my research, this name would be a source of contention for some people and felt like it really kept them youthful. And that can be positive when they're young and fresh, right? But the older and more mature they tried to get, some people argued that this name held them back. Now, their first live song was actually Super Bass by Nicki Minaj. And this was truly a testament to the time because I don't know who chose this song. I don't know why they had these girls rapping. But F what I have to say, the other judges absolutely loved it. With one judge saying, "This is the best girl band that's ever been on X Factor." And that would ring true. And I'll tell you why. They slammed down the doors by becoming the longest lasting girl group in the competition by passing week 7. And they also became the first girl group to make it to the X Factor finals. They really had a good blend, great harmonies. They sounded great together, and their chemistry was there. And I want you guys to remember that this season was 1 year after One Direction's. So even though One Direction did not win their season, they made it to 3rd, they skyrocketed after. And it was also the most viewed season that also had Cher Lloyd on it. So groups were in. The show is more popular than ever, and I'm sure Psycho wanted a girl group equivalent, right? The girl answer to One Direction. Little Mix would win season 8 of the X Factor, becoming the first girl group to ever do that. The first girl group to ever win the competition. So they already started off historic. They were breaking records on the show, and that was a testament to their chemistry, their hard work, and all of it culminating and brewing to this perfect storm. Now, they went on to release their winter single, which was a cover song, and that released on December 11th, 2011. And then a documentary came out called The Extra Factor, The Winter Story, and that aired on TV in December as well. Although the views technically had dropped from season 7, it would still become the 3rd most watched season in X Factor UK's history. So a lot of people were tuned in. Not me though, but a lot of y'all were. Comment down below if you were there. Let me know. So while on the show, the girls were able to start developing their brand. And it really does build really good infrastructure to create a fan base, to introduce yourself, to gain fans before you even officially launch. But this can also bring very negative attention. X Factor is notorious for using their contestants to rummage up drama for the tabloids, right? Feeding stories to the vicious British tabloids. And not also properly supporting contestants with mental health resources. And so Little Mix got some of the same treatment. We can talk about Jesy Nelson, who particularly received a lot of bullying off of her looks, but more specifically her weight. Tabloids like The Sun and the Daily Mail would post side-by-side pictures of her against her group mates, saying that she was bigger or less glamorous than her group mates. And she even broke down on one episode of The X Factor because even while on the show, she started to become tormented and tortured about her appearance.
Being in a girl group with like 3 beautiful girls. They're obviously a lot slimmer and smaller than me, and obviously now I'm a lot bigger.
Some people felt like she didn't deserve her spot in the group because she wasn't pretty enough. And there were some people who would take every opportunity to tell her that. And on the flip, there was an outpour of support as well, right? I think it added to the resilience and it kind of made her this beacon in a way, right? We're also turning a new leaf in the early 2010s towards body positivity. And I think Jesy was also very inspirational for a lot of young girls who felt ridiculed for their weight or who felt they weren't physically pretty enough. She remembers being so beaten up and bruised mentally that by the time they won the show, the win hardly mattered. She was mentally not there anymore. While on the opposite end, you have somebody like Perrie, who by the British media and the tabloids was labeled the pretty blonde one, the pretty blonde bombshell. But she would be later trampled over in the media for her relationship with a global superstar, We'll get there. We'll talk about it later. And although Leigh-Ann, for example, didn't get as much tabloid attack, she was kind of invisible. She was kind of invisible. Some fans noticed that she was cropped out of pictures, that she was left out of headlines along with her group mates. It's almost like she really didn't receive that much attention at all. And some fans hinted at, and I would be very quick to believe, that there was some racial bias there, right? And Leigh-Ann goes through a whole journey later to unpack all of this, as well as you have Jade, who I think also kind of felt like she faded to the back. But she also dealt with issues surrounding her own body image prior to being on the show, and being on the show also did not help with that either. And don't worry, in the controversy and scandal section, we will detail all of this very meticulously, but I wanted to frame a picture of what their time looked like on the show and what their perceptions were getting off of the show. The good news is that they built a fan base, okay, very early on, and this was the dawn. This was the dawn of Stan Twitter, okay? Good and bad thing. They were ultimately loved for their chemistry, youthfulness, and vocals. And there weren't really any other girl groups, big girl groups, that were cracking the mainstream. They definitely single-handedly kickstarted the girl group revival in the 2010s. So let's talk about the debut. Now, after winning the show, they did sign with Psycho Entertainment, like previous contestants and winners before. One Direction, Leona Lewis, Cher Lloyd, later Fifth Harmony. Now, 2012 was their launch year. It was their fresh start, and they began with appearances, singing, showing face, and building their brand and name around the UK. In May 2012, they signed a deal to start releasing products like dolls, puzzles, games, and accessories. And this is really why labels love groups. There is so much investment opportunity, which makes a good buy-in for businessmen. They also had been uploading covers to YouTube, really highlighting their vocals. I think this was a huge strong point and selling point of the group. And one thing the girls were always praised about was their harmonies and their vocals. They were tight. And that's one thing I never realized because I was introduced to them through their singles. And that's not to say that their singles did not have like vocal prowess, but when I was really hearing these acapellas, these girls can sing. And they sounded damn good together. So the debut single finally came in August 2020 called Wings. Wings was released through Psycho Entertainment and Columbia Records. And it was a very electrifying debut, if I say so myself. The song was written by the girls with the help of some other writers and producers and was directly inspired by their hardships that they faced and had to navigate while on X Factor, becoming public figures overnight, being young women, judged for their looks and outfits over their talent. So they wanted to be involved because they wanted to stamp their story and their sound. Jesy saying, "We were like, we want our sound to be Nicki Minaj mixed with Missy Elliott with a bit of En Vogue, put in a blender." And I love to hear that they actually had some sort of input very early on. This becomes a theme and a pattern. They tend to write and co-write a lot of their music, which I feel like is very rare for a girl group or a boy group. And I'll go as far to say that it was a genius debut, especially for the subject matter and their younger target audience. The song was a success. It was a global success on the charts. It went #1 in the UK, 100K copies in the first week, charting in Australia, Ireland, Japan, Brazil, and they were really firing on all cylinders. This really established their sound and presence in the industry and, most importantly, in the group space. Simultaneously, the girls released their debut autobiography, Ready to Fly, that released in August as well. And they were really growing and expanding a fan base in Australia very particularly. So in October 2012, they flew there for a promotional tour, and they went on to release their debut album, DNA, in November 2012. And fun fact, the songs were largely co-written by the girls, like we said. Now, the album peaked at #3 in the UK and made it on some other charts around the world. The album reached #4 in the USA on the Billboard Hot 200, making them the first British girl group since the Spice Girls to reach top 10. Remember how I told you guys Leigh-Ann used to dress up as the Spice Girls? Full circle. And not only that, it was the highest charting entry for a female group's debut album since Danity Kane in 2006. By every stretch, they were this renaissance. The album itself had fairly positive reviews. It was high energy, dance oriented, and not to mention, DNA from the album became the second single. This was more electropop, and it was absolutely a vibe shift from Wings. Many critics, though, found it a generic or safe second single, but they also wanted to show and highlight their versatility. And in January 2013, they signed a deal with Columbia Records North America, and this is actually when Wings was officially released as their debut in the US on February 2013. And as someone who didn't watch their X Factor season, I'm pretty sure this is when I heard the song. And I even knew the song. I thought the song was genius. Wings actually peaked at number 79 on the US Billboard Hot 100 for 9 weeks. They were doing this dual promo, and we see this a lot with UK artists, European artists, people outside of our market. They'll drop their song there, work that for a year or so, and then come over here and either rebrand it, reshift, refocus the promo, and drop it in the US later. Now, they released Change Your Life and How You Doin' as the third and fourth single on the DNA album. How You Doin' went on to feature the Missy Elliott, and to promote their album, they went on their very first tour called the DNA Tour from January to February 2013. Now let's talk about the breakthrough. So we're going to move into their era, their next era, Salute. In a 2013 Digital Spy interview, they said very clearly that they wanted their second album to be more rooted in R&B, and that was the goal, to mature it up just a tad. They would again contribute heavily to writing, co-writing, and revealing to the fans that they were even more involved with this album than the last one. So they released the lead single for this album in October 2013 called Move, which again was co-written by them. And form your own opinions, but I do want to emphasize that this was named by Billboard as one of the top 100 greatest girl group songs of all time. Do what you want with that information. The song has a lot of elements. It's a little different. I could see how it wouldn't land. I think it takes a minute, but it's different. It was a little ambitious. Now, the song peaked at number 3 on the UK charts, and the single would go platinum in the UK and Brazil, right? But again, it wasn't quite the global success that they saw with Wings. However, it was still propelling them forward bit by bit by bit. Now, their album Salute was released in the UK November 2013 and later released in the States months later in February 2014. Now, Little Me was the album's second single, finally released in May 2014. And they also released the album's title track, Salute, as the very third single. Kind of surprised they didn't start the era with that. But hey, and it definitely jogged my memory. Very memorable song, like melody, chant. Love the military theme, and there's a very heavy lyrical theme of female woman empowerment. And that was a pillar for Little Mix, their ethos, and what they wanted to represent and stand for. And as good and grand as the song was, it charted okay, but did very well in the UK, which I always think was their main focus. I want to make that very clear. Now, starting in May 2014 through July, the girls embarked on their Salute tour. There were 20 sold-out dates between the UK and Ireland. Now, this is where things get a little tricky. They were initially supposed to do a North American leg of their tour, but they would end up canceling those dates because they said they needed to work on the third album. Now, in hindsight, just as an outsider, I wonder if the return of investment wouldn't have been worth it in the long run, right? I'm sure they wanted a bit more chart success and to really, really gain more momentum before doing a tour. So my guess is they were probably just going to bleed money if they had to travel over here, and they're really not seeing the numbers that they need to. They probably anticipated a little more support. But this brings us to our next section, enter in the competition. So now the year is 2015, and Little Mix has multiple charting singles under their belt. They've been building a solid identity. I want to iterate that they were now not the only hot girl group on the market. This is not to maliciously compare these two groups, because they've been compared enough, okay? But it's just a fact of the matter. Fifth Harmony went through the same X Factor pipeline just 1 year later in the US version after Little Mix won their season. So there was not a huge gap. And although Fifth Harmony formed officially in 2012, they really kickstarted and started to gain traction between 2013, but more so 2014. And by 2015, Fifth Harmony had hits like Boss, Sledgehammer, and now Worth It. There was this silent, maybe not so silent competition brewing. Whether on their teams, because who could be the biggest, but it gets a little tricky because they were both signed to Psycho Entertainment. So at what point is your own label actively working against you to propel another group? And I do think that this happened, and we'll get there. But also the fans, it became kind of a competition between the harmonizers and the mixers. And because their missions and story were similar, girl empowerment, soloists put in a group, X Factor, boom, Little Mix clearly, I want to make this very clear, Little Mix was much more vocally cohesive, 110%, way more harmonic than Fifth Harmony. While Fifth Harmony was almost anything but cohesive, go check out that video, them being in the US clearly gave them an edge. It's a huge market. It's one of the biggest music markets in the entire world. Also on occasions, I gotta say, I did grow up with Fifth Harmony. I think their music was better. It was a bit better. Don't shoot the messenger. Their songs were better. Yes, maybe a little cringe. Very cringe. But you also can't do the whole girl group tease without a little bit of cringe. So I forgive a little bit of it on both ends. But these groups were formed at the dawn of Stan Twitter, right? So you could absolutely imagine how serious some people took this made up rivalry. And then to add on top of it, it kind of became this national rivalry. The UK versus the US. Who's better? And these comparisons really revved up when Little Mix released their lead single, Black Magic, in May 2015. Now, the song debuted at #1 in the UK, and in the US, it would become their highest charting song on the Billboard Hot 100, making it to number 67. This was their moment, okay? The music video had memorable themes, it was cute, and became this mini pop culture moment. Like the girl farting while talking to her crush, his face kills me every time. But the video has 1.1 billion views. 1.1 billion views. So globally, this song was a smash success. Overall, cute song, a little kids boppy, a little young. The only thing now is they were being compared to Fifth Harmony because Fifth Harmony released Worth It only a couple months prior to Black Magic releasing. So Worth It was a global smash success as well, but it reached number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100, so it was arguably a bigger hit, and I would argue a better song. Just saying. There were a lot of fans at the time comparing their chart placements, choreography, tracking which group was nominated for what award. And it was a war between the group that writes and can harmonize, and the one who doesn't but has bigger hits and arguably more star power. And one really only came a year after the other, so it was very close. And this has turned into a lingering question of who was the superior girl group of the 2010s? Remember, Fifth Harmony as a group of 5 didn't last nearly as long as Little Mix, but their hits were hits, okay? And Little Mix had longevity, fan loyalty, and a very steady global base. So numerically, transparently, Little Mix is going to clear every time. Like, I'm just going to tell you guys right now, outside of some chart placements, numerically, Little Mix is clearing. All right, so next we are on to Get Weird. Black Magic was the song to kick off their Get Weird era. They performed at the 2015 Teen Choice Awards and won the Breakout Artist Award, showing up to the award show in nerd costumes from the Black Magic music video. Yikes. But aside from that, they were on a roll. Little Mix performed at Taylor Swift's 1989 tour for one date. And then at this time, the girls also co-wrote Britney Spears' song Pretty Girls, which was released in May 2015. They released their singles Love Me Like You and Secret Love Song featuring Jason Derulo, as well as Hair featuring Sean Paul. So it was very important that they were able to cross-collaborate with, artists from different places, different styles. And their album, Get Weird, released in November 2015, their third studio album. And a side note, this album title sucks. What are we doing? Who named the album?
With Get Weird, okay? It's their third studio album.
Getting weird.
Yeah.
Here, give me one weird thing about you.
This.
I'm sorry. But as for the album sonically, It was a bit more retro, a lot more retro, with sounds of the 80s, as well as this doo-wop feel that was really present throughout the album. But Rolling Stone actually listed this album as the 14th best pop album of 2015. Now, it debuted in the UK at number 2 and in the US at number 13 on the Billboard Hot 200 albums, making them the only girl group in the UK to have their first 3 albums debut in the top 15, okay, follow me, of the Billboard Hot 100. They were nominated in 2016 for the Brit Awards for British Single of the Year and British Video of the Year for Black Magic. And now we're coming up on 5 years of being a group. And this is where you have to start figuring out, how do you keep yourself from stagnating? They were growing, but it would kind of plateau a bit, and then it would go up and it would plateau, and then it would go up. So they had to start figuring out the formula that worked. They went on their Get Weird tour, starting in March 2016, where they performed in Europe, Asia, and Oceania. Now, it looks like they didn't visit North America yet again, like they had proposed they would after canceling their last tour here, the American leg of the Salute Tour. That leads us into market challenges. I feel like this became a really big issue around this point. At least that's what I started to pick up. As I predicted, there's been a couple things, a couple symptoms, we can diagnose a couple symptoms that prevented Little Mix from getting really big here. Because that's one of the reasons why I feel like I didn't really know about this group in depth. And I didn't really care to, because the promo was weak. And I know a good chunk of my American viewers, maybe a lot of you guys might be actually surprised how big this group is. And I'm not saying this as a dig. I'm making this video today to iterate that and encapsulate their impact. But it's because there was this gap, right? Columbia Records, which is under Sony, was their US distributor. And it seems like they were very slow to prioritize their US releases. Big budgets weren't really given over here. Touring was not made a priority. There weren't a lot of televised performances. The management was not really hustling for it. And by the time some of their hits gained traction in the US, Columbia, Sony, as well as Psycho Entertainment were far more invested and interested in One Direction and now Fifth Harmony. And I think Psycho wanted Fifth Harmony to reign supreme in North America. I think they wanted them to reign supreme on this side of the world. And I think they wanted to make Little Mix create as less conflict, so you're not taking away from one group or the other. So we're gonna keep Little Mix over here. You could interpret that as the label maybe sabotaging. However, it really depends on your goals. Now, I will say the girls did have a desire to make it in America, so that was something that they all identified wanting to happen.
I feel like America, we it's like it just sort of slipped through our hands a little bit. Not resentment, but a sort of upset that we didn't stick to America more and properly do it. Because I think we were so close each time we went, and then the more we kept leaving, the less the sort of hype.
And I don't know if I would use the word sabotage, but in a way, yeah, you're clearly giving your biggest budget and focus to this American girl group. And your UK one, you keep canceling the tours, you're not really giving them big promotional budgets over here. You're prioritizing one over the other. So it's almost a conflict of interest. And the fact that these groups were coexisting at the same time made it harder. And yes, Little Mix did do promo here. They opened for Demi Lovato and her Neon Lights tour in 2014. They did some festivals. They did a mini Little Mall tour for the DNA album in 2013. And it was all gearing up for this headline tour. We know this. It's business at the end of the day. If you're not going to get a return of your investment, fish out the cash. To do what? To do what? And I don't think their team was really willing to take that risk anymore. We have Fifth Harmony. We don't need y'all over here. You guys just do what you've been doing. You're successful. Do that. They were also given very disturbing advice to make it big in the United States. Years later, Leigh-Ann revealed that they were told by their management to flirt with higher-ups, executives, during a US promotional tour in order to get further in their career. And luckily, the girls weren't really willing to do that. But the sexism that really bubbles up to the surface and is always a constant can hold you back if you're not willing to play the game. And the girls also admitted that the label didn't really know how to market them. And although I don't think with a group like this, you have to market them so narrowly, they can't do other styles or put them in one lane. But I will say, listening to their discography in succession, it was a little bit like switching back and forth. It's like, do you want to be this mature girl group? Do we want to be bubblegum? Do we want to be youthful? Do we want to be young? It was kind of like Whiplash a little bit, because you have to think about it. They started off fun, girly, young from the start, and I think they kept that essence throughout. Then they'd try to like mature it up visually and sonically, but then like the next album, it would completely shift back. It's like their label didn't know how to market them. Do you want them to be a bubblegum pop group? Arguably with vocals like that, I just don't think that the music will always accentuate that. Or do you want them to be this R&B vocal supergroup, which I think their music suited really well with those tracks, but it probably wasn't going to make them any more bigger than they became, because people don't really care about vocalists like that. Let me put this out here. I could be wrong, but in the US pop scene and in our music and in our media in general, we tend to gravitate towards more mature, explicit, and controversial themes. I.e. Cher Lloyd's video. Look at how they marketed her in the UK versus how they did in the US. That gives you your answer. And especially as pop went on in the late 2010s, the mid 2010s, a lot of pop music became angstier. Look at Billie Eilish. Look at Olivia Rodrigo. Look at Taylor Swift. And I think Little Mix was safe contextually. And after a while, I just don't think people here really latched on to that. For example, they were kind of given personas, visual personas, very early on in their career that would evolve. But for their first album, Perrie was supposed to be the boho flower child. Jesy was supposed to be the rebel or rock chick. Leigh-Ann was supposed to be the trendsetter and diva. And Jade was quirky or retro. Very Spice Girls coded, very on the nose. US success is not everything. I want to iterate that. But I do think that there's been this lingering question and conversation around, why was Little Mix never as big in the US? They could have been bigger. Like, there were just people here who didn't know. But these questions, I think, really started to rev up because the group at this point had been out since 2011. However, stats do not lie. They were still very much touring, grossing a lot in touring, selling products, really connecting with their fans. So there were always two sides, multiple sides of this story. So let's get into Glory Days. And Glory Days as in their fourth studio album. And that would release November 2016. And they kicked this new era off with their lead single, Shout Out to My Ex, which debuted at #1 in the UK, making it their fourth single to do so. The song also charted very well globally and cracked the US Billboard Hot 100 at number 69. Now, for some reason, I do not remember this song, like it did not unlock a memory for me, but I do know that this song brought a lot of drama and really, really made the headlines sing. Because people speculated that it was about Perrie and Zayn Malik's 2015 breakup. I hope she getting better sex. Hope she ain't picking it like you did, babe. And we will talk about this more in depth later, but we know that he had now moved on with Gigi Hadid. And we know they would go on to have a very long relationship and have a kid. But there was also a tad more controversy with this song when some fans noticed that it sounded similar to the group GRL's 2014 song Ugly Heart, with similarities in its structure, sound, tempo, and chantiness. Even the melody a tad, to the point where there was a trending hashtag shout out to Ugly Heart. And this is a very important detail that I missed, but GRL was the one who started the hashtag shout out to Ugly Heart. So they stoked the flames to the fire. But Little Mix bit back a little bit with Jade saying,
every song is going to have a similar chord sequence, slightly similar lyrics or melodies, like, you know, it happens all the time, but it doesn't mean that they're both not incredible songs.
GRL song, it sounds a lot more country, like that's like sort of country.
Okay, wait, maybe we should listen with it. This is GRL, and then it's different.
Yeah,
it's a different song.
It's so different. Okay. I think maybe because it was a girl band as well. I think people just like to have something negative to say.
I just think stop trying to hop on the bandwagon.
And she's not wrong in saying that it happens a lot. And that's why you can't sue everybody for copyright or, you know, get credits for an interpolation, whatnot, because it absolutely does happen. However, For those who knew both songs, it sounded similar, and I could definitely see the vision. Now back to the album. When Glory Days released, it became their first #1 album in the UK. They released singles Touch and No More Sad Songs featuring Machine Gun Kelly as their second and third single. But I want to sit with Touch for a minute because Touch was a moment and it should have been a bigger one. I feel like this is really where Little Mix captured that perfect blend of pop, catchiness. It was trendy for the 2016-2017 time frame. But if you were on social media, I feel like you definitely heard this song. The visuals were also choreographed by Perrie, okay? So they put all of their investment in the video, in the budget. Like, all I gotta say is they ate this up. Touch from top to bottom, almost a perfect pop song, in my opinion. Now, there was some controversy, however, over the music video. When fans became outraged over the editing team allegedly editing and photoshopping Jesy's body in the video. Now, fans noticed shots of Jesy's waist that seemed a bit distorted or smaller, while the wall behind her was also a little distorted. And some fans sought to actually boycott the music video because they were very convinced and very sure that this was photoshopped, especially because Jesy had dealt with so much shame regarding her weight, her looks, etc. Why would the team continue to perpetuate? Why would you put that pressure on somebody? And although it was denied that there was any Photoshop, the pictures look a little dodgy. It looked a little dodgy, but I cannot attest to whether they actually did or didn't. Now, from February to April 2017, they opened for Ariana Grande's Dangerous Woman tour on the North American leg. So that was a good move. Now, if you guys remember, this was Ariana's tour that was the target of a terrorist bombing, okay? And that happened in Manchester. Little Mix was not performing at that show, but they would go on to participate in the One Love Manchester benefit concert months later. So in, I think it was June 2017. Now, around this time, they also did their own headlining tour, the Glory Days tour, through Europe and through Asia as well as Oceania again. They knew what worked, they knew who to cater to, and so they did that. And it would become their highest grossing tour to date, making $42 million. And actually, I believe it was the highest grossing girl group tour of the decade, if I have that correct, making it their biggest to date. Now, at this time, they did a remix collaboration with Latin American boy band CNCO or Cinco, I don't know. But they did the remix to the song Reggaeton Lento. And I remember hearing the original. I loved the original song. Not sure if I was there for the remix, but it was a cute move. They were singing in Spanish. It was a different vibe, a different switch up, and a nice crossover. They also embarked on their Summer Hits tour in 2018, which was their very first stadium tour. Short, sweet, impactful. So let's talk about On to the Next. And this is where the Nicki and Cardi feud comes into play. I don't want to save this for the scandals because it's very relevant to this period, and I just want to make sure the timelines are correct. Now, we know that the girl group was a well-oiled machine at this point. If you guys have not picked up on it yet, they have not taken a break, okay? There's no breaks in Little Mix land. They were always hopping to next project, next tour, next thing. In February 2018, Leigh-Ann said they would be releasing their 5th studio album soon. And in October 2018, they released and secured the coveted Nicki feature with their song Woman Like Me. And because no one can escape the wrath of Nicki and Cardi's feud, Little Mix's song with Nicki Minaj was caught in the crossfires of all of this. Up until this point, Little Mix hadn't been in a lot of drama, so this was kind of off of left field. It was a wild card. Now, this was around the time that Nicki Minaj and Cardi B got into their physical altercation at a New York Fashion Week event, and this was back in September 2018. By the way, Woman Like Me released, I believe, in October 2018, okay? So their altercation happened about a month prior. Now, Cardi ended up making a video addressing the whole beef with Nicki Minaj, addressing Nicki because they were going back and forth at it, subtweeting, directly tweeting each other. Cardi B discussed how the Little Mix song, Woman Like Me, was first given to her.
That Woman Like Me record, yeah, I had to decline it because I'm doing a lot of pop records, so I can't, over-exaggerate myself. But that came to me first, and then they give it to you. Oh, wait, but let me show you. Not footage. This on my media. You hear that open verse, right? I got it.
And because Cardi turned it down, Nicki got the feature. Now, I don't really remember the context, and I couldn't pretend to care about the context of why she was even bringing that up. But I think it had something to do with, you say I stop your bag, but I was offered this song. And because I turned it down, they gave it to you. So I actually gave you a bag. Little Mix enters the chat. Because out of all fairness, you mention our name, you have every single right to defend yourself and clarify. Now, Little Mix did reveal that, yes, both ladies were sent the song, but ultimately their team decided to go with Nicki Minaj's version. They went with hers first. So that does differ Cardi's story of, I turned them down. And Little Mix concluded by saying, we went with Nicki because, like we've said over the years and years, it's been a dream of ours to work with her since the beginning. And that is very, very true.
Collaborate with.
Nicki Minaj is who Little Mix would love to collab with.
Nicki Minaj?
Ooh.
Yeah. We'd love to work with Nicki Minaj. We see it in every interview. Yeah, hoping that she's going to see it. And
they have said on countless occasions, they even said when they were developing the group's sound, they wanted a hint of Nicki Minaj in there, even dating back to their X Factor days. And they also included screenshots of dates and times of them reaching out to Nicki's team to confirm it. Again, I do not blame them for inserting themselves. Their name was inserted. I did find it a little interesting, their initial response on Instagram, which I believe is still up till this day, actually. The no shade and then calling her hun in the same thing. I mean, if that's not fueling the flames to the fire, I don't know what is. And I will say that although they kept that post up, they did backtrack the tone because I think they realized their initial post sounded a little stan Twittery. Like, it was just kind of like, okay, they're choosing Team Nicki over Team Cardi, and I think that they just should have remained as neutral as possible for the optics, if I'm being honest. Now, they went to Twitter to re-clarify and kind of backtrack that tone by saying, quote, we love and respect both Nicki and Cardi B. Both were approached by our label to work with us on Women Like Me, Nicki, then Cardi. We went with Nicki because, like we said over and over the years, it's been a dream of ours to work with her since the beginning. We have nothing but love and positivity for both Nicki and Cardi, right? So they took a more diplomatic approach the second time. And then things did get a little bit worse when Jade, you guys remember that feature on Instagram where you could see what people were liking? Yeah. Jade was also caught liking shady comments and posts about the situation, but in favor of Nicki Minaj, in which Nicki would screenshot Jade's interactions and post them on Twitter to prove that Little Mix was in fact rocking with Nicki. Jade later did express why they inserted themselves because they said, quote, we're not used to being dragged into any drama, but I think we just wanted to make sure that if our name is brought up in anything, that it was all factual and right. Which is more than fair. I totally agree. I just think that the first post was a little, but I wonder in hindsight, you know, because hindsight is always 20/20. I wonder if the girls regret going as hard for Nicki Minaj in this instance. Looking back at it now, because there would be another issue that they'd have involving Nicki later that we will talk about. But I just wonder, I ponder that they might have felt like, maybe we did a little too much, but we will get there. Now, let's move on to LM5. We already know the girls proceeded on with their fifth album, LM5, which was released November 2018. Now, this is another album title I don't love. I don't really love the album titles. I know why they did it. They said that this is what the fans were calling it while they were waiting for the project, and this is a very common practice in stan Twitter. Stan culture. They do it with like Mariah Carey, MC16, AG5, AG6. It's very common, but they decided to keep that name. And this was the first time that they would get executive producer credits on one of their albums, furthering their mission to sing about topics like sexism, feminism, Me Too, body positivity, as well as sexuality. And Little Mix was going to be in the mix when it came to social issues. Several of the girls in the group were very vocal, very loud about social issues, what was going on in the world, and they really wanted their music to start representing that. No more that they just want to be like this, you know, cheeky female empowerment, like bubblegum pop and commercial. They also wanted to start getting into the nitty gritty. Now, this album made Little Mix the first girl group to have 5 consecutive top 5 studio albums in the UK, while also making the top 10 in 7 other music markets. And in the US, it actually debuted at number 40. Still a great feat, but as you can see by each album chart in the US, it is declining. Now, to rewind just a tad bit, 6 days before LM5 released, they announced that they had left Psycho Entertainment, which is Simon Cowell's label. Now, we will talk about this and why that relationship was dissolved in our next section in the scandals and controversies, but they still stayed within the Sony universe and they just decided to move to RCA UK for future releases. So that was almost like an end of an era. Now, they really pushed Woman Like Me off of the album, performing it with Nicki at the MTV EMAs in November 2018. And they also released singles like Joan of Arc, The Cure, Wasabi, which that was low-key a little bit of a moment. I remember hearing that somewhere. I don't know if it was in a commercial or something. I don't know. As well as Think About Us featuring Ty Dolla $ign. Perrie recently shared as well that Gabriella, the song that is now released by Cat's Eye, was offered to Little Mix years and years and years ago. So I guess this song was getting passed around.
And I was obsessed with it. I used to listen to it in the car constantly, like the demo. Oh my gosh. I loved it.
But I do think that Little Mix could have added some spice with the harmonies. So it really shows how interconnected everything is. And in the industry, things really just get recycled, passed around, put on the shelf until somebody else wants it. Now, at the 2019 Brit Awards, they won Best British Video for A Woman Like Me. And like they always do, they announced that they were working on yet another album. And I'm honestly exhausted for them. Like, think about it. I feel a little fatigued and exhausted making this long ass video. Bro, I'm exhausted for them. Who do they owe? The Mafia? Can somebody tell me why they were peddling music like this? Give the girls a break. But anyways, they embarked on their 6th concert tour in the fall of 2019, accompanied by a worldwide film of that tour a year later. And to round it out in 2019, they finally released their first Christmas single called One I've Been Missing. We're getting to the end as we knew it. Now we're in 2020, okay? And the girls had headlined a music festival in Sao Paulo, Brazil. They also began a TV music competition show on BBC in September 2020. That was called Little Mix The Search. And they were aiming to find the next big boy band, girl group, etc. And I do remember seeing some clips of this on YouTube. Like, actually the series went up. Like, it had a lot of views. And there was one girl who auditioned in particular named Tyler Lewis. Go check her out. But that's where I discovered her for the first time. And she sang Circles by Mariah Carey. Yeah, Circles from Emancipation of Mimi. When I tell you guys, that is one of the hardest, most agile songs in Mariah's discography. Kid you not. And she did the damn thing. So so definitely give her a listen. She's really, really good. But there were definitely moments on the show. They found a lot of great talent. The show was not renewed for a 2nd season, so there's only 1 season. They forged forward with the breakup song, which was released in March 2020. And I noticed that the budget, like the video, was a little, it wasn't like the same quality, up to standard as some of their others, but that was actually because COVID-19 came in and the world shut down. So they had to improvise, do some animation and all of that. Now, COVID did put a wrench on some of their plans, but they did do a virtual concert called Little Mix Uncanceled. Give the girls a break. Actually, though, can they get a break? Please. Like, this is not necessary. They released a couple promo singles like Not a Pop Song and Happiness, with them releasing their 3rd official single, Sweet Melody, in October 2020. Now, Sweet Melody was a bit of a moment. It was a needed moment. Some boost, they got another #1 in the UK, which it actually took some weeks to climb to that. It wasn't like an immediate smash. But I do want to make it clear, though, that the US was no longer a focus for real. But regardless, outside of that, it seemed like Little Mix at this point really, really needed a hit. They needed something that was going to make people talk, because I think things were slightly plateauing a bit. Like, their group was coming up on 9 years. That is hard for anybody to sustain. Honestly, a creative career for 9 years is impressive, especially as a group. So you have to think, like, that was just a natural happenstance. How do we keep it fresh? How do we keep the cycle going? They needed a hit moment, and Sweet Melody felt like their last chance. So production-wise, the song felt very fresh to me, especially in comparison to some of their other songs. It was a great single. I think it was produced by MNEK, and Taylor Parks was a writer, and some other very talented people. I thought it was a great single. Critics actually praised the song and the imagery for its structure, intensity, sweetness, sexiness, with Billboard naming it one of the best releases of 2020. They ate it up, top to bottom, choreo, everything, ad-libs, looks, boom. And they even co-hosted the 2020 MTV EMAs that year, and performed the song later that evening. After Sweet Melody, everything would change, and honestly, things were already changing behind the scenes during this time. Let's get into the controversies. Now, if you haven't already, this is where you get up, stretch, bathroom break, do what you gotta do. Because when I say we have a half of a video left, I'm so serious. I am so serious. And we're gonna start with Jesy leaving. Some things start to get a little tense from here, all right? At this point, Little Mix had been together since 2011. They had survived almost 10 years as a group with the original lineup. That's almost unheard of. So to me, it wasn't really a matter of if the bow would break. It was more about when. And that time was starting to near. Now, we know that things would start to change. The girls were set to release their 6th studio album, Confetti, which would end up coming out in November 2020. We do know that they recorded most of the album during COVID and they had to isolate. So it wasn't quite the same process as all of their other albums, but Leigh-Ann cited it as one of their biggest albums yet. And in a lot of ways it was, right? It was the group's most successful album charting-wise, with its most top 10 chart placements globally. Now, I did notice something. In their song Wasabi, that single concluded the LM5 era. Jesy has one line where she says, "Oh, what's she going solo? Oh, I bet they're gonna break up. Oh, but what the hell do you know?" So it was essentially commenting. I'm sure tons of people were fans, spectators are like, okay, how long is this train gonna go? I'm sure they'll break up soon. And Jesy said in the song, okay, yeah, and that's not news. But the irony was it was. I also noticed that Jesy was in her own shots, separate from the other girls, and it was the same shot, that music video. So it almost kind of seemed like something was shifting prior to Confetti dropping. Now, around the time of Confetti's release, Little Mix's publicist announced on November 17th, after the album's release, like a couple days, maybe a week, that Jesy would take some time off due to private medical reasons. And this was after Jesy had missed a couple of promo performances and events. So she didn't host the MTV EMAs with the girls, and she didn't make it to the finale of Little Mix Final Search, or Little Mix The Search. Around this time, Little Mix was really working on the Sweet Melody music video around September 2020. And Jesy years later talked about how this was a very hard time for her. She was not in a good place in her life and her mental health. She had actually went on a major diet and described it as essentially starving herself so she could look good in this music video. And so this really started to take a toll on her. And this video was kind of notated as the rock bottom for Jesy. And she just couldn't face being in the group anymore. And I have to give it to her. I will say this. How many times in this video have I said that their schedule sounds exhausting, that they don't get a break? I'm kind of surprised somebody said, I'm not doing this shit no more sooner. I'm surprised.
We had like a sort of sit down, honest discussion with each other. Like, we all, the feelers were out there. We had a whole plan pre-COVID of we do the tour and then we part ways for a bit. COVID got in the way of that a little bit. We didn't want to wait till it dribbled out or we started hating each other, all that stuff. Yeah. We were like, we're doing so well that now's the time to go on a hiatus.
Now, December 2020 was the day that she announced she was officially departing and leaving Little Mix, that it affected her mental health. And in the post it said, "I find the constant pressure of being in a girl group and living up to expectations to be very hard. I need to spend some time with the people I love, doing things that make me happy." Now, the girls also addressed it publicly, and they completely gave their full support to Jesy and just wanted to make sure that she was putting her mental health first.
I will never begrudge Jesy wanting to leave, because if she needed to do that for herself, no matter what happened behind the scenes or, you know, anything that unfolded, I'll never discredit or invalidate the struggles that she had in the group. Particularly at the beginning, she really did suffer the most.
However, they were still going to continue on as Little Mix, and that journey was not yet done for them. Now, Jesy left only a month after Confetti's album release, which I'm sure restructured a lot and was not probably the plan at the beginning of the year. Now, Little Mix proceeded on as a trio from this point forward, and we will continue their trio story a little bit later. But a lot of questions, or some, kind of question the fate of Little Mix. Like, was this the domino effect that was just going to completely make everything crumble down? With Jesy gone, I mean, she was there from day one, and she was an integral part of the equation. She had a very distinct tone, and it was almost kind of like, what is Little Mix without Jesy? The fans didn't know that reality. To me, it makes sense why somebody would want to leave this group situation after so long and want to retreat from the spotlight and recharge, because you've been going hard since 2011. But what I think really hurt and where things got really murky was how things were handled after the breakup, because the girls appeared to be very supportive throughout the group, their time in the group, but also when she said she left. And I always think that there was a part of Jesy that was very disconnected. If we want to roll the cameras back and roll it all the way back to when they won X Factor, Jesy remembers the day they won being one of the worst days of her life, because she was so consumed with the pressure, the tabloids, what people had to say about her. She wasn't really even happy about winning at that point. That didn't matter to her. She says that she remembers back to that date thinking, quote, "This is the worst day of my life. I should have been on cloud 9, she says. I had Leigh-Ann in my room being like, this is the best. And I was like, no, it isn't. From day one, I think all of the girls, despite all of their struggles, were very eager to be in the group. And that's not to say Jesy wasn't. But from day one, I think Jesy was always fighting this battle. And so in ways, I think it almost presented kind of like the other three girls were here and chipper and da-da-da-da, while Jesy was kind of sectioned off and always like worried about her weight and worried about what people were saying about her, which would be revealed that the other girls had their own issues too. We will get into that. But I will say, it all came to a shock to the fandom when 6 months later, after announcing her departure from the group, the breakup, that Jesy signed a Polydor record in May 2021. 6 months, okay? Just 6 months. After she said that she was going to be leaving because of mental health. And so a lot of people interpreted it as she's probably going to take a step away from the limelight. She didn't say she was going to do a solo career. She didn't say none of that. So it was a bit controversial. People started questioning, did you really leave because of mental health in comparison, or did you just really want to go solo? Why didn't you just say that? And I think this low-key took the girls by surprise as well.
I think.
Yeah.
And then she quite quickly released a solo record.
Yeah. I know what you're doing. Like you're giggling like, what? No, I'm not going to jump on that. I just...
That was what the internet said.
Now, things kind of started to become shady, and fans started questioning the relationship that the girls had to Jesy. In October 2021, there was an unfollowing debacle when it appeared that Little Mix unfollowed Jesy on their personal accounts. And this was actually around the time that Jesy released her debut single. And the whole Blackfishing scandal, stay tuned. However, some people insinuated that Jesy maybe had blocked them or unfollowed them first. And later in 2021, Jesy revealed that she no longer speaks to the girls and that they don't keep in touch. But you could also say on their end, maybe Jesy cut ties. A lot of Jesy's fans kind of argued, well, and if she did kind of cut them out of her life, it's because she needed to separate herself and the group was traumatic for her and she couldn't deal with it anymore. And that may be true. But what I will say is it's one thing to leave the idea of the actual group, the entity of Little Mix behind and the idea of it. That's one thing. But to leave your friends behind or to leave those girls behind who stood by you, you know, Perrie was Perrie, Leigh-Ann was Leigh-Ann, and Jade was Jade. And although they all had different relationships, I know some people felt like Jesy and Leigh-Ann's relationship had started to erode closer to the end of their stint in Little Mix. But, you know, do you kind of X out your friends who have been there for you? I don't know. And Jesy did say that she was bullied and not treated well by her team, by her staff.
I'm just going to be honest, like the team that I had prior to what I've got now, like didn't care, genuinely didn't. And that was something that really led me to feeling depressed and wanting to not do it anymore, because I genuinely felt like no one gave a shit. And when I voiced that I was struggling, no one cared. And that was like, now like obviously I've got a new team and I'm around like people that genuinely love and care about me, and it makes such a difference.
So that might have very well had nothing to do with the girls, and I really don't think a lot had to do with them. I think some people even took it like Jesy left them behind and then started to smell herself a bit and then distance herself, because why are y'all ignoring each other? Like, what's the bad blood? They supported you leaving. They vouched for you. When you weren't showing up to promo events, they filled in, they covered, they didn't complain about it. They never spoke bad about you. And now it's, we don't talk. I don't know what the bad blood is. Da-da-da. When everybody kind of thought you were leaving for your mental health. And then you pop out with a solo career and a record deal. You know what I mean? Like, it was a weird dynamic. Now, there is a key part of this story that does develop, and it involves Nicki Minaj. We will talk about that, but we're going to put a pin in this real quick, because before we get into the big blow up, I do want to humanize everybody here, and I want to really make sure we properly highlight each and every one of the girls' struggles, controversies, and kind of scandals that they went through while in the group, so that we can fully look at this picture and understand how we got here. So I want to talk about young women in the media and how this manifested in their lives, because it was very harmful to each and every one of these girls in their own kind of unique ways. So we are going to start with Jesy, and we're going to talk about her bout with cyberbullying and her mental health struggle and journey to get better and to heal. After doing some research and looking in forums and just kind of seeing what some fans had to say, I did find this consistent narrative that some people kind of felt like Jesy played the victim card a lot. And that made her one of Little Mix's weakest assets. Now, this is not me saying this. These are things that I have gathered, because I also think it's very important to look at the cultural conversation. How were people viewing the group at this time? Saying that her insecurities made the team lose money, held them back, and lose opportunities. And I think this is a very obtuse way to look at it, that she's just merely playing the victim card. Because I do think with the way that women are treated and tormented about their looks in the media, I think the last thing we need to be telling women to do is shut up about it. I think that's the last thing we need to do. But there are some key components here, and I just want to kind of clarify. So Jesy really expanded about her time in Little Mix and really dealing with cyberbullying, lack of self-esteem, in her documentary, her 2019 documentary called Odd One Out. And it detailed how incredibly toxic fans were, spectators were, and how this really spiraled into some serious issues with depression. Now, Jesy's mom expressed that over the years, she felt like she really lost her daughter to social media. A girl that was once confident, had this glimmer in her eye. It slowly started to dim, and honestly, not even slowly, almost overnight, it completely flipped. And I think it's a testament to, like, a lot of artists will tell you this, and I think we all really have to listen, that it's bittersweet to get bigger, right? Because as much as you want people to know your name and name and lights, and the more fans you get, it's awesome. But that comes with more hate and more visibility. So it's like a double-edged sword. You get positives, but there's a lot of negatives that come with it. And so she became a shell of herself, right? She wasn't as bubbly, not as happy, not as confident, even though she tried to appear to the public like she was. And she said at one point she couldn't even go back and watch old clips of herself on The X Factor, because it takes her back to this deep, dark place. And it reminds her of a girl that she doesn't know anymore. And so there was days that she was so depressed that she just couldn't show up for work.
It got so bad to the point where I couldn't even bring myself to get out of bed in the morning, and I just stopped turning up for work.
And I'm assuming this is where people started to feel like her victim narrative, I say that in quotes, was starting to affect the group. Okay, now you're not showing up for promo appearances. Now you're not showing up for here. And we started to see this happen more towards the end, like 2020, maybe 2019, correct me if I'm wrong. Jesy did reveal that there were some people, backstage people in their team, who were happy that Jesy left, because I'm assuming they felt like she was kind of difficult to work with.
And felt like when I was coming to work, like, you know, you can just feel like an energy of people just not wanting you to be there. And I hated that. Like, I hated walking into a room thinking people don't want me to be here.
In 2024, one of Little Mix's producers, Trajan Marie, claimed that for their final song they recorded as a quartet called No Time for Tears, it wasn't actually Jesy's voice on that the backing vocals was somebody impersonating her, where they said, quote, somebody else impersonating her because she was quite literally over it. And it does seem like the group was affected by her struggle with her insecurities, okay? And before you guys put up the red flags, what do you mean the other girls were irritated with her for being insecure? Relationship where no matter what you say or what you do, you can never make them feel any better about themselves, to where you start feeling kind of bad about yourself. I think that kind of started to happen.
I just look shit and uncomfortable. I just look like a fat ugly rat.
You look tiny. Everyone says she looks like a goddess, but she won't be told.
There's no telling her.
There is no telling the Nelson.
I'm not saying that they blame her for that, but I think Leigh-Ann in the documentary did say that because of a lot of these things, it kind of became a nightmare when it came to editing music videos, picking wardrobe, approvals, because Jesy was so particular and hyper fixated on how she looked because she did not want negative comments.
She is a little bit of a nightmare when it comes to like video shoots and photo shoots and approving things, and it has been a bit hard within the group.
And I will say my heart really broke for her in this documentary, the breaking down, the dissecting of how her confidence started to erode bit by bit, and not only just eroding her confidence, but developing severe depression to a point in 2013 where she tried to take her own life. And I don't think that was something people knew prior to Jesy doing the documentary. And also in the doc, Jesy did a lot of advocacy work with anti-bullying. And we'll see in current present day, it seems like Jesy has found that. Let's talk about Perrie, her struggle in the media, targeted in love, and the whole dating exploitation. Now for some, Perrie seemed like she had it all. An amazing vocal. She was labeled as the blonde bombshell. You would think, what issues did she have? I mean, she seemed like she kind of smooth sailed, but not quite. In 2019, Perrie did open up about panic attacks that she developed during her time in the group. She would get them before performing at shows, sometimes in public spaces, and it was a feeling that she couldn't quite control. She said that it got much worse around Get Weird and Glory Days, which was around 2015 to 2016, because their schedules were jam-packed and the group was starting to get bigger. It was something that she has actively worked through in therapy. She's gotten techniques. Now, one of the biggest wrenches in the media for Perrie was her love life and her relationship in particular with Zayn Malik from One Direction. Now, dating rumors began while Perrie was still on The X Factor season 8, and 1D was 1 year removed from their season. Now, they came back to perform on the show, and I think that is where they both met for the first time. They went public, though, officially in 2012. Now, here's the biggest issue here. Doesn't take a rocket scientist. Zayn was clearly in one of the biggest boy bands at the time. Now, this was very early on in 1D's days. They were still growing. Not quite there yet, but they had a very solid fan base, all right? Now, if we do the math, 2 + 2 = 4. And when we do the math, we know that fans are very parasocial, specifically over boy bands. They are convinced that they're dating them, married to them, future wife, all of that. So of course, girls were not happy when Perrie was dating Zayn. And this led to hate tweets, jealousy, a hate campaign for Perrie. And she was like just fresh off of X Factor. Some people even thought that the romance was staged or fake. Like, oh, we have an X Factor love story. Like, this is too good to be true. Or perhaps was she dating him for fame? And so that also became something that she kind of had to outrun in the media. A lot of mixers did rally behind Perrie, making that very clear. But this relationship would make very big headlines over the years. It was a bit of a rocky ride, however, when there were cheating rumors at the top of 2013. She stuck beside him, regardless of all of what was being said in the media, and the pair would later get engaged in 2013. Now, teenagers' hearts broke around the world, as we know, because Zayn was off the market, and this is honestly one of the biggest boy band no-nos. Now, mixers were generally happy for them, but some people feared that it would overshadow the group's growth and overshadow the group's identity. Like, can they stand in themselves? That she was now more so known as Zayn's fiance. And I also saw this with some American viewers. A couple people said they only really knew who Perrie was or Little Mix was because she dated Zayn. So this was the fear that people had, that their brands would become too intertwined and that Little Mix would live completely in the shadow of One Direction. More cheating rumors emerged throughout their relationship, where he was spotted with other women while he was on tour. But Zayn continuously would declare his love for Perrie. One declaration of love that got over 500,000 likes. So he was shouting from the rooftop, But we do know that Zayn left One Direction in 2015, and unfortunately some people did blame Perrie for him leaving. Headlines around that time labeled her as controlling, with many Directioners taking this as a fact and sympathizing with Zayn. It didn't help when X Factor judge Louis Walsh said, quote, "What I found in the past is as things get on and as they get girlfriends, the girlfriends are whispering things in their ears saying you should be a solo star, you should be the lead singer, and that's usually the problem." And that was in response to Zayn leaving One Direction. So there was this running narrative now that Perrie was like this generation's Yoko Ono. Right? Like she was the girl that broke the group up and crushed millions of girls' dreams. So a lot of people took that out on her. And Zayn would clarify years and years later that at the time, he actually kind of just like wanted to be the first to make a solo record. And also just like mentally, the relationship just wasn't there anymore.
And then there was obviously underlying issues like within our friendships too. We'd been together every day for 5 years and we got sick of each other, if we're being completely honest.
So it didn't have anything to do with Perrie. However, she kind of got smeared for it to some capacity. Now, unfortunately, they called off the engagement in August 2015. And Zayn allegedly ended their relationship over text, in which Perrie says was one of the hardest, most gut-wrenching things that she's ever had to experience, especially dealing with it in the media. That was like making everything 100 times worse. Now, Zayn denies texting her this information, but I don't know. I just don't think she would lie about that. And shortly after their breakup, tabloids began snapping pictures of Zayn with his new girlfriend, Gigi Hadid. And I'm talking by like November, December 2015. They were out, seen publicly, and their relationship was officially confirmed not long after that. Also, Gigi was the main girl, the lead girl in his music video for Pillow Talk in January 2016. So Perrie never really talked about him moving on. She never really slandered him. Like,
we went and hung out for a bit and just chatted to him, and he's literally... I'm being deadly serious. I went with... What's his face?
Who's on their phone the most? Who's on their phone the most?
Not anymore.
Oh. Here's the sign.
Can I ask, are you on good terms with Zayn, or where are things?
We don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, it's all right.
We'd rather not talk about it.
I want, what has been your lowest X moment before you came out the other side?
Perrie.
Perrie.
Oh dear. Well, but yeah, I was at the airport and I got an awful phone call from someone. And then I just remember
She had a little mini
screaming in the
breakdown
airport.
in the
In an
airport.
airport, you don't do that, do you?
And it was
You
in
know
the
what I mean?
security line, so I was thought, oh god.
Yeah, I was like, we're not in here in the country.
We
so
literally just made like a little shell huddle around
Shell.
her.
Threw on some sunglasses.
So that no one could
Yeah.
see her, and we were like, it's okay, just let it out.
I was like,
she just kind of kept forging forward. We know that Shout Out to My Ex would come out of all of this, and the group was really successful at the time. So she really just put her head down, buried herself into her work. She did reveal recently, in 2025, on the We Need to Talk podcast, that Zayn did reach out to her years later while she was in her new relationship.
And I remember there was one point my ex reached out and I didn't know how to handle the situation because I'd been with Alex for like 1.5 years, 2 years. And I felt a bit uncomfortable about it. And I remember sweating and like panicking, thinking, I've got to tell him that obviously I've spoke to him.
Yes.
And I remember being terrified, thinking, oh no. And then I sat down and I was like, I need to tell you something. He was like, okay, is everything all right? I was like, yes, such and such reached out today. And it was really weird. And he was like, saying what? So I told him everything. And then he was like, okay, well, I really appreciate you telling me. Like, thank you for letting me know. That's fine. Like, hopefully he doesn't contact you again.
And so she was very candid about that. Nobody knew that until now. This goes to show that Perrie also kind of dealt with her own unique smearing in the media that maybe some of the other girls, yes, absolutely did experience. But when you're putting love, heartbreak, and then harsh tabloids together, and it's not even only British media reporting on this, but it's also American media and it's global news, because One Direction is like, it's One Direction. That's gotta be tough. So next, we're going to talk about Leigh-Ann and the racism that she dealt with. Now, Leigh-Ann released a BBC documentary in 2021 called Race, Pop, and Power, which was filmed throughout 2020. And she really tapped into the nuances and treatment of Black women, Black artists, and creative spaces, but more focused on the music industry, as well as the unique issues that dark-skinned Black artists, dark-skinned Black women face, especially in pop. And the documentary was her seeking answers to her experiences, things that she hadn't yet digested, because remember, the group was always on go. So she had never been able to really piece it together in this way, and she wanted to document all of this. Keep in mind, in 2020, George Floyd, the BLM march, movements completely erupted, honestly, all over the globe. And so it had a lot of people reflecting. She had a lot of very candid conversations, and it started off really with her dissecting her childhood and talking to her parents. And she wanted to ask her parents questions that she never really delved into before on racism, ethnicity, and their heritage, right? She's mixed race. We talked about how her mom is of Asian ancestry. She's half. And then her dad is of Jamaican ancestry and he's half. I know that I cannot speak much to how racism shows up in the UK. I'm not from there, and I'm not going to pretend that I understand every nuance. But I also kind of am getting the hint that it's not really as talked about. So please comment down below if you are from the UK. I would love to understand that dynamic more. And it also could have been because she came from a biracial background. So like you have all of these cultures and things at play. However, this was not something that they really talked about growing up. And I was a little shocked by that. But again, like, is that really her fault that that was not something her parents really prioritized? Maybe not. But I do want to say, I think it's very important to have these conversations with your kids at a young age. But more importantly, make them feel empowered, not defeated. There's a way you can talk about it, making them aware, but also, again, not defeating them. And she recalls going to them about some of the treatment and like the microaggressions she was noticing while in the group. But her parents often kind of told her, well, look at the glass half full, right? Like, you're in this girl group. What do you have to complain about? And so she often suppressed that. So she didn't really understand the concept of when, like, you know, a choreographer would tell her, you know, you got to work 10 times harder to get noticed.
He just turned to me and he just said, you're the Black girl, you're gonna have to work 10 times harder. I've never ever been told that. Like, my parents never ever said to me, you're gonna need to work harder. Like, they never ever brought my race into it. I found out for myself because I wasn't prepared for what was gonna happen after you said that.
But Leigh-Ann did notice that she felt a little invisible, that she wasn't really the fan fave. Or there were clips where fans would gravitate towards the other three girls and would completely ignore her.
They worked with the other girls, and like there were times where like the fans would like walk past me, and or like there was one time when they asked me to take the picture with another girl with a fan, and I was like, I literally said no and walked off because I was just like, oh, but these little things.
And she didn't realize at the time that a lot of that was kind of interconnected with her race. And I'm not gonna lie, that sounds very similar to a lot of the experiences that Normani talked about, that fans would skip over her. I will say there was a little bit of like controversy, I guess, because some people also kind of felt like, I know that you're unpacking all of this in this documentary, I respect it, but like, are you really just now realizing all of this? Like, you really are just learning about racism and colorism and you're half Black? You know what I mean? Like, some people felt like she was not the right person to be platformed to talk about these things. And also, I'm not going to be in the mode of policing somebody for finally having the conversations and trying to get it. Like, she did also give the floor to Black women in pop like Alexandra Burke, now, as well as Keisha from the Sugar Babes, to really share their candid experiences with racism, as well as the intersection of sexism in the industry. So misogynoir, if you will. Now, Leigh-Ann doesn't explain what she experienced as racial abuse, but it was something a bit less overt. Something that you might call microaggressions, as I used before. They might be little comments that are not meant in malice, but they are often rooted in stereotypes, negative stereotypes, and they just overall make you uncomfortable. And so Leigh-Ann also started to notice, and she did sometimes, actually a lot of times, her race and ethnicity was used to shape her persona and identity in the group. And one thing she spoke about later was the image curation and the makeovers they did with her on the show. They shaved her head. Why did you shave her head? They shaved the side of her head because they wanted to give her this Rihanna edit. Of course, you guys are both Bayesian. you're black, you're half. You guys didn't want her to build an identity for herself. And this is something Leigh-Ann recalls being kind of upset over. She didn't want to cut her hair. And I also noticed when we talked about how the girls were kind of like given personas for each era, I very quickly noticed that Leigh-Ann's was always an iteration of a diva archetype, urban glam, boss babe, empowered woman, confident, right? The stereotypes prevailed. And while some of you guys might say, those aren't negative stereotypes, but when Black women are constantly portrayed as strong and can carry the weight of the world, it leads to a lot of negligence, emotional negligence, where you are expected to not be human. You're superhuman, and that is harmful. So yeah, there is an issue with that. And we notice that pattern with a lot of Black girls in the group. They are always like the spunky one, the sassy one, the one with the attitude. It's never shy, never reserved, never understated. And these all build up to creating stereotypes, specifically in the media. There was this feeling of Leigh-Ann like, do I need to work harder? Is there something I'm not doing that makes me forgettable? Like, why do I feel invisible in this group? It's crazy to say, but she recalls performing at their Sao Paulo show in Brazil in 2020. She remembered looking in the sea of the audience, and it was mainly Black people in the audience, and she had never felt so embraced in her entire career. That says a lot. She was in the group since 2011. That's a long time to kind of feel like underappreciated by your fans. Now, they also delved into colorism and how Leigh-Ann's appearance did have this appeal. Fair skin, curly hair, loose curls is deemed more marketable. And she said, quote, "I know my privilege, and what I explore in this film is the fact that if I were some shades darker, I probably wouldn't be here." I see it in my comments all the time. Anytime I talk about colorism. The peanut gallery. So if you guys can understand the concept of racism, why can you guys not understand the concept of colorism? I don't understand why it seems like such a mental block. But I'm very glad that she addressed this, because that is something people gloss over a lot. In this segment, she did have to address her fiance, her now husband's, colorist tweets that resurfaced back in the day. Yep. I thought it was very important, because the torment that young Black girls had to face on the internet, especially 2010s, horrible. I was very glad that she addressed that, especially in the context of the music industry. And definitely, like I said, go check it out. It actually really pairs well with the last video that I did about the plight of Black pop stars. So go watch that as well afterward. And she also opened up a fund called the Black Fund that provides monetary resources. And lastly, we are going to talk about Jade's struggle with her image as well as her identity. Speaking of Jade, she also faced a lot of issues with racism throughout her entire life, but she had kind of a unique or different experience, somewhat in contrast to Leigh-Ann, but kind of related. The media almost whitewashed her in a way, and this is something that she has said verbatim herself.
18, got put in the crew, moved to London, and all of a sudden I became white passant. A couple of people said it to us, and I was like, what does white passant mean? When you look white, and I was like, pfft.
She opened up about her ethnicity. We know that she is Arab, she's Yemeni and Egyptian on her mother's side, and she is English on her father's. And as a kid, she was very connected to her culture, started to learn how to read and write in Arabic. But when her grandfather passed, when she was around 13 years old, that tradition and that connection almost kind of passed with him. And so she carried and harbored a bit of resentment for not prioritizing that, not talking about her mom's experiences as an Arab woman, living in the UK.
I think as a teenager, because we never discussed things that I didn't realise I needed to talk about, like race, I think it actually affected me quite a bit. I was quite scared to promote or speak out about my heritage. And honestly, that's something that I still carry with me now. I'm quite ashamed of that.
And so this is something that kind of translated to Jade. And so when she was on X Factor, because of how outspoken Jade is now about social issues, very outspoken, 2025 till this day. I know that's something that really bothers her deeply. So I just wanted to put that out there, that she's dealt with this her entire life. She was bullied racially in school growing up.
Growing up in a small town up north, and I was always seen as like the token darkie, which was the expression that was always used to describe us. I remember I went to school. I used to get pinned in the toilets. I had to have like bleach powder thrown on us.
Horribly for having browner skin. So it's something that has been a part of her life, but when she kind of got to the limelight, it's never something that she talked about, and it's not something she really embraced either. And in the documentary, as well as various interviews, Jade has been very open about her issues with her appearance and body image. She remembers wanting a nose job, something that Leigh-Ann also wanted too, after their very first Elle magazine photo cover shoot, where they noticed that their faces were photoshopped and that their nose was much, much smaller. And so they kind of thought, hey, maybe we should get nose jobs so that, you know, the person won't have to like edit our pictures that bad. And I don't think they ever went through with it, but this is little spurts of what started to happen. And just like a trigger warning, very quick trigger warning about eating disorders. So I will provide maybe a timestamp to the next section if you would like to skip. But Jade has been very open about her eating disorder that she experienced as a young teenager. And I believe she kind of worked through most of it before being on the show. But of course, that translated to her time in the group. I feel like that's something you're kind of constantly working through. But years of being bullied, mounting insecurities, and the pressure to look away were a part of it, but she says a big part of it was the control she got from it because she lacked so much control in so many other parts of her life. She said that the support of her bandmates and her family was life-saving in a lot of ways, and they were an anchor for her. Next section in our scandal and controversy is Jesy's solo career in flames, Blackfishing and all. So Jesy had left the group, and about 6 months after leaving, she signed a deal with Polydor Records in 2021. Now, people had been calling out Jesy's tan for some time, okay? As well as a picture that she had posted in June 2018, wearing locks, which she deleted. Like, she did alter her appearance a lot over the years, which, if I'm being honest, this was kind of a phase where like everybody was into the baddie aesthetic. See, people were now plumping up their lips. You know, features before that were shunned were now in. Not shocked by this trajectory, but people specifically noticed this with Jesy. And also apparently like she had friends that like she was posting up saying the N-word. Like there was just a lot of questionable things that fans were starting to call her out for.
Oh, my man.
It's not my Jamaican accent.
Was that the accent? Leigh-Ann has just come back from the island. Jamaica!
Even while she was in the group. So when Jesy went solo and released her first single, Boys, what was supposed to be this big moment fell completely on its face, flat on its face. I mean, it was rough to witness. Hood cosplay, braids, dark tan, textured hair, her affinity for bad boys. It was a song that was released October 2021 and featured Nicki Minaj. And the song was an ode to Diddy's 2001 song, Bad Boys for Life. And he actually made a cameo in the video.
And Friday nights, that's my night, all right? That's the night that I party.
Which clearly aged like milk. And I remember American Twitter, but specifically Black Twitter, reacting to this video because let's be real, and I'm gonna be very clear. A lot of people did not know who Little Mix was like that. A lot of people did not know who Jesy Nelson was as an individual. So, hey, Nicki's on the song. A lot of people were like, oh, what's this about? So yes, for some people, this was the very first time they were ever introduced to this girl, and they didn't know she was a white woman. There was a lot of people who thought she was biracial, very specifically. And now that I think about it, y'all, she kind of looks like, if you watch Building the Band, season 1, she kind of looks like the girl in season 1. What's their name? Season 5? Like, that's the closest I could get to of like, she looked biracial. And so yes, there were actually people who didn't know. And that's what we talk about when we say blackfishing. It's like people literally did not know that she was not mixed or half black or something. So the song landed at number 4 in the UK, staying on the top 20 for several weeks. It didn't really garner much momentum outside of outrage and Twitter think pieces that were very well deserved. But what people didn't know is that tanning and blackfishing apparently was addressed while she was in the group, and it created like maybe a mini strain while the girls were together. It was revealed that they had addressed her. Some people might think, you know, oh, a tan sounds silly because people tan. Like, I know so many people who tan. But I think when we talk about blackfishing, I think there's layers to it. And it's not just about the tan. It's tied to stereotype and caricature. I think that's when you start to get into this blackfishing territory, maybe use of AAVE, styling, persona, and perpetuation of stereotypes as well. One journalist, Raven Smith of Vogue, said that she was, quote, parroting the aesthetics of blackness. Being black becomes a one-dimensional visual, a pair of hot lips, a fat ass, an aggressively horny attitude. We become sexually promiscuous beauties or criminally adjacent bad boys for life. It was just an odd video. An odd moment. Like, she was caught, like, the faces, the mannerisms, the braids and the beads. It was just very forced. That's the best way that I can describe it. And I don't know if they thought, oh, like, we want her to be big in the US, so we're gonna push like this bad boy, like, hood aesthetic, like people are gonna eat it up. No, absolutely not. It was drenched in caricature and stereotype. The white girl living in a gated community with the bad black boy. He's a rebel. If you don't see the problem with that. But she also started to get trolled because fans started using the 2020 meme of Tamara Mowry.
Jesy Nelson.
Who's that?
Oh, come on, guys.
Nobody.
Who's okay.
Who's that? Is that a singer?
Well, let's Google.
And so that became a meme. So now people started resurfacing that meme in wake of the whole boys controversy, basically using it as a diss. Now you might be thinking, how could your solo debut get worse? Well, it did. When Nicki Minaj and Jesy Nelson did an Instagram Live in October 2021. And this was to address the song and all of the blackfishing allegations. Now, this was right during the song's release. I believe it was the day of, maybe the day after. Nicki put on her cape and came to defend Jesy. And one of her main arguments was, well, black women wear straight hair. And she said, well, no one can tell us what to do, so why are you going to tell her what to do?
Tell all of these singers that y'all follow and all of these reality TV people that y'all follow, tell them to take off their spray tan and their tans and their lips and their everything they're doing. That means the black girls can't wear a long blonde weave wig down to our feet. We're going to do whatever the want, when we want, how we want.
So Nicki was basically like, well, hey, black women wear wigs, so go ahead, darken your skin, wear grills, wear textured hair, and, you know, put on that hood aesthetic. And she was completely missing the historical and social nuance. And it's not about the tan specifically, right? It's that it's packaged in stereotype and mockery. And although Jesy says that the curly hair was really just mimicking her real texture, come on.
And I'm just really lucky as a white girl that when I'm in the sun, I tan so dark. Like, so many people have said to me before, like, you know, like Leigh-Ann even said to me in the group, like, are you sure you're like not mixed race? You're like not mixed race because you go darker than me in the sun. That's crazy. To get a wig that emulated the same texture as my hair. And I genuinely didn't think I was doing anything wrong.
But it got worse when Leigh-Ann's name entered the chat. In the live, Nicki directly called out Leigh-Ann after unverified DMs showed Leigh-Ann reaching out to a TikToker named NoHuns DMs, allegedly asking him to make a video about Jesy's blackfishing. So it read as Leigh-Ann was trying to sabotage her solo release, her debut release. There were other things in the messages, like calling her a horrible friend and saying that Jesy blocked them, but I do want you guys to keep this at the front of your brains, okay? These were never verified. They were never confirmed. So right now, all of the drama that's about to proceed is kind of based off of facts that are not facts. They're not facts. So on live, Nicki said that Leigh-Ann, or insinuated that she was jealous.
As soon as people can't get a bag with you, they tend to want to stop your bag. Please stop. It screams just insecurity. It screams that you're jealous. Only jealous people do things like this. People who have something negative to say about you. They're clowns. They're jealous, miserable clowns.
Thank you, babe.
Also, Nicki was like, why did you now just address her about blackfishing when y'all were in a group for 9 years?
If you was in this woman's group and you ain't talk about this shit for 10 years, and as soon as you see she got a video come out with Nicki Minaj and Puffy, now you sending the stations text messages and all this shit.
Even though the girls have come out and said that we had addressed her prior to her going solo. So this really has nothing to do with us being jealous with her pursuing a solo career. But I will say, to present all sides of the argument, people also started to get on Leigh-Ann, saying that she has friends who tan, who tan entirely too dark and hangs out with them, probably doesn't address them. And they also get into blackfishing territory.
For your friend who's blackfishing, right? Why everybody can't blackfish then? If it's cool for your friend, stop using this fake selective outrage when you guys have personal vendettas against people.
So people started to call out hypocrisy. Okay, well, you're calling out Jesy and you said that you said X, Y, and Z and you're in these DMs calling her out for blackfishing, but you have friends who tan entirely too dark, right? So now it kind of turned into, we have two sides. People who were defending Jesy and people who were defending Leigh-Ann, as well as like mixers in the middle. Nicki was fighting Jessy's battle harder than Jesy was fighting it. It was weird. I remember seeing this like, why is she so... You worked with the girls before, like why are you so passionate about this? It was odd. It was very, very odd. And so, as we already know, this proceeded in Leigh-Ann getting attacks from the Barbs, getting attacked by Barbs. It's like clockwork. While Jesy stayed very silent amidst all of this. In fact, a lot of people pointed out, like, hey girl, I thought you were the anti-bullying advocate. Like, you just dropped a documentary about, I don't do cyberbullying. I don't stand for that no matter the reason. Why are you sitting here chuckling on live as Nicki Minaj is literally annihilating, like violating, like verbally doing way too much over a group member? By the way, over unverified DMs.
Take them text messages and shove it up your ass. Because when you do clown shit, print them text messages out, bust your open and shove it up your motherfucking ass, okay? And stop trying to...
And in my mind, I would think, hey, I was in a group with this girl for 9 years. I'm going to reach out to her privately so I can figure out if this is real or not. Do I need to feed into this beef? Or do we need to let this go? And you're laughing on live while Nicki is doing the absolute most. As we said, these DMs were never confirmed to be real, and I believe Leigh-Ann never confirmed or denied it because she didn't want to fuel into the rumors. But there was a clip, I believe it was actually Leigh-Ann's 30th birthday, or she was having a birthday party, and she did do a very heartfelt speech that was posted to the internet, and it seemed like it might have been in reference to this situation.
I know my character. You know my character. Anyone that meets me knows my fucking character.
A lot of people were like, I don't think these are real because Leigh-Ann this doesn't seem like this is in her character. So that has always been kind of up for debate. I don't know what you guys think. I really don't know if it really matters to rehash that. And again, this is why I said previously with the whole woman like me debacle, the Nicki and Cardi feud, this is exactly why I say I wonder if Little Mix, the remaining members, ever like kind of regret a little bit going so hard and almost kind of throwing themselves and making them look, you know, a little snarky or shady. Because now, all of these years later, Nicki Minaj was like completely targeting a bandmate over things that were not confirmed. But to wrap up the solo saga, specifically Jesy's, she was mocked by viewers when she did a 2021 Jingle Ball performance. It's been memed at this point. You can kind of see it for yourself.
Nice a little boring when you in between the sheets.
I don't have to say much. So it was just like the whole thing was just kind of embarrassing. I will say it does appear that the girls had unfollowed her after Boys release. This song almost single-handedly killed Jesy's career credibility before it could even really start. And this warranted, to me, a strong reaction. It warranted people to kind of throw her a side eye. And then this brings us to kind of a microcosm of all of this. A trend that kind of sparked after all of this went in flames was erasing Jesy. All of this spiraled into animosity amongst the fans. Now it was like, whose side are you on? The fandom was almost split. There were those who stood with Jesy and there were others that stood with Little Mix. A lot of fans themselves were just confused and felt like it was weird because 6 months after you left the group, now you got a whole record deal. Those don't usually happen overnight. So this was something you were actively planning. Your departure was saying it was for mental health and you don't want to be compared to the girls. How are you tending to your mental health if now you're diving headfirst into a solo career. And like, she can do whatever the hell she wants. Like, at the end of the day, if she wanted to do a solo career, she didn't owe anybody anything. But it was just the optics of it all. Around 2021, Little Mix fans became almost notorious for editing Jesy out of music videos and performances. And I mean almost masterfully. I don't know who in y'all's fandom, the video editing, the graphic design degree, I don't know. If you were to look at some of these videos and come across them and you didn't know who Little Mix was, you would have thought it was a trio from day one. That's how insanely precise these edits are. It single-handedly has aimed to erase Jesy's person from the group, revise history. And although I think some of these edits started off kind of like a joke, after the whole boys thing played out on the internet, fans almost used this as a protest. Okay, you want to forget about the group? Then we'll forget that you were in the group. We will erase your memory from the group since you just don't want to be associated with them anymore. I will say it's petty and it's a little nasty, I'm not gonna lie, but I remember seeing some of these edits even on my timeline and I was like, wait, wasn't there a fourth girl? Like, wait, where is she at? No, they were just editing her out of these videos. It was insane. Now, lastly, in our scandal/controversy section, we're gonna cap it off with Simon's Control and Psycho. Now, one thing that you guys might actually be kind of surprised about is that the drama of being in a girl group was really not the biggest challenge. Like, they didn't really have that many issues with each other. They got along pretty well while they were in the group for a long time. That's not to say that they didn't have like ever argue, but it was more like a sisterly thing. And I never thought about it, but in hindsight, I think this group did a very good job of not ever really establishing a lead and letting the girls all kind of be on their own, you know, on the same level. They just brought a little something else to the table. And I think that was one of the reasons why they lasted so long. Jade even said, look, we're so boring that at this point, the media has to make up things because there's just nothing to talk about. There were some headlines that did ring true. And one of them was that there was tension brewing with their management. Keep in mind, they signed to Psycho Music without being mentored by Simon on the show at all. I don't know what his involvement was behind the scenes in development, but he was out in America doing X Factor. So now you win, and he's your boss. And during their early years and spurts throughout, the girls really felt restricted under Psycho creatively. And yes, they did co-write, but I get the gist that maybe a lot of their image choices and concepts were out of their control, and probably the label was very selective on the singles. So in 2018, they did leave Psycho right before LM5 dropped, like 6 days before, due to disagreements over a couple things. So one, there was disagreements between Simon's label Psycho and Little Mix's management company, where they differed over Woman Like Me, specifically the single with Nicki Minaj. That single was just like, it just blew everything up. When Simon Cowell said that the girls did not initially want to record Woman Like Me, but they denied that, and they said, look, we wanted the song, we tweaked some of the lyrics, we got Nicki on it. They claim that yes, they did indeed write, but it does look like they got that song from the artist Jess Glynn, so it wasn't completely their own song before. And that's where there was an issue with the writing credits, because the girls felt like they didn't get the credit they deserved. But Simon called the drama embarrassing and called them out, essentially saying, I don't know why some of these artists think they're bigger than the program, where he was annoyed that his staff at Psycho had been misrepresented in this scenario, saying, quote, why do artists think they're more important than staff members? They're not. They're the same. Issues over delay with budgets. And 4, the lack of creative control that they felt, and the lack of connecting with their music direction. A very clear example that led to the split in 2018, the girls initially wanted to release their song Strip as the lead single for LM5.
Take off all my makeup, 'cause I love what's under.
They co-directed it, they did a naked photo shoot where they wrote insults they've received on their bodies, but Woman Like Me was chosen by the label to be the single, even though the girls really were dead set on Strip. So they were disappointed that it wasn't really given the moment that they wanted it to be given. The girls did admit that they felt free for the first time after they left Simon's label, Psycho. Jade saying it literally f***ed us over. Leigh-Ann would say, we were in control of nothing. People told us what to do, what to wear, what to say, and we reached a point where we needed to fight for our freedoms. So in Not a Pop Song in 2020, One lyric reads, "I don't do what Simon says." This is after they left, so they were throwing little jabs. And Jade has been kind of notorious for throwing jabs at Psycho and, you know, the entertainment industry. In one of her songs, Angel of My Dream, which we'll talk about later, she does say there's a line that says selling my soul to a psycho, which is really a double entendre.
Selling my soul to a psycho. They say I'm so lucky. Psycho happens to be the name of Simon Cowell's company.
Coincidentally, yes.
She's kind of had her foot on Simon's neck. Like, she doesn't really care about speaking up about him. But I will say that a lot of contestants, a lot of people have complained about Simon Cowell, and he's controlling and he wants his hands in a lot and he's stubborn. And it is also his company. Every move being controlled, being overworked. Some of these things are things that we've seen in the story. After a while, it just wasn't a situation that suited what they wanted and what they wanted their group to be, their legacy to be. So we are finally out of these scandals, the controversies. We have made it through the other side of the tunnel, but we have some important things to talk about. Trio things and the hiatus. We know that Jesy left the group a month after Confetti released. Just rejogging your memory a little bit, but their little mixed dream was not done, and in 2021, their Glamour magazine cover became the first as a trio. And I want you guys to think about this. This is like the only standing girl group at this point who have survived the test of time, relationships. Yes, Jesy was gone now, but for the most part, they had been around since the early 2010s and they remained a constant. And the girls released Confetti as a single, and they featured Saweetie on the remix, with the music video dropping April 2021. And I was watching this like just to do research, and I was like, where did they get these men from? Whole time it was them dressed up as men. Now keep in mind, around this time, big news, Perrie and Leigh-Ann were pregnant at the same time, and they were working. So if you don't know what commitment to a group looks like, this is it. The girls were still winning awards, becoming the first girl group to win the British group at the 2021 Brit Awards, in July 2021. They were honored with wax figures at Madame Tussauds in London, with Jesy, yes, being included in this because she was an integral part of the group for 9 years. In November 2021, they released their first Greatest Hits album in honor of their 10th anniversary, and they did release a couple new tracks, I think about 5 on that album. And it actually became one of Sony's top 10 best-selling albums in 2022. I also want to add, because this is where the hiatus kicks in, you know, I think they were having conversations internally. Okay, let's do the greatest hits. What do we go from here? So on December 21st, 2021, the girls announced that they were taking an official hiatus after their next tour. It wasn't a split, but rather a time to take a beat, see you later, and potentially come back in the future. They embarked on their Confetti tour in 2022, and for Glasgow's OVO Hydro Arena, or OVO, I don't know, they were awarded as the group with the highest of all ticket sales at that arena. In May 2021, they gave fans access to their last tour date, called Little Mix The Last Show, and in parentheses, for now, ... And this was basically the see you later, as the girls did say they planned to reunite in the future, but they all wanted to focus on their own personal lives, but I even think more importantly, their solo music, because they'd never been able to explore that. This was not a Fifth Harmony story where, you know, you had one member in the group who was like out here doing solo singles and charting on the Billboard Hot 100. Like, they were a group, very much so. And they also said they plan to not release music at the same time so that they're not clashing on the charts, because they just all want to support each other, with Perrie saying, quote, "We're rooting for each other, not competing against each other." And I think that's just a testament to how close their relationship actually is. And so they went to forge their own path. Can they still do what many groups struggle to do? Have multiple people come from a group and, you know, blow up to stardom solo. And that story is still being written. So let's talk about it. Their solo careers and where they are now. So let's get it. We're going to start with Jesy. We know that Jesy had a head start with her solo endeavors. We don't need to rehash that. Okay? Been there, done that. But it was first announced in 2022 that she was going to have a debut album coming to fans very soon. But not long after, she ended up splitting with her label. I don't know if she was dropped or like it was a mutual thing, but she said that they split because of creative differences. Now, she has released some songs independently throughout the years, but very sparingly, not a lot. And if you go to her YouTube page, you'll see that there's really not a lot of content on there. So that's just a representation of how much she's really stepped away from music for right now. And her song Bad Thing released in 2023, which was an emotional release that I think way much more suited her voice.
I'ma keep on coming back until you leave me.
It was like this emotional ballad. She was actually praised by a Women's Aid, a charity called Women's Aid, for bringing awareness to DV. When I watched the video for this and I listened to the song, this is the kind of music. It was captivating. It made you sit up in your seat. And I wonder why they didn't try to go with this route early on. I think her career could have looked completely different. Her most recent single was released in 2024 and it's called Mine, which features Zion Foster. He's a rapper who also happens to be her fiance and the father of her kids. But before that, I'm just kind of jogging back, the media had been pretty invested into Jesy's relationships over the years, but she is now with rapper Zion Foster and one of her collaborators as of November 2022. Now, I guess the relationship was like a tad of a roller coaster. They collabed on music. And actually in 2024, Jesy was torched yet again for sharing or resharing a snippet of a song that the two of them had worked on together, where she goes,
He's 25 and I'm very free, but he's the realest man I'll ever meet.
People slammed her for the corny lyric and said it was like kind of weird to like highlight the age gap. Like, it's not an inappropriate relationship, but it's just like, why would you? So she did get some backlash for that. However, she announced that she was having twins in January 2025. And while the girls were born in May, born healthy, they were delivered prematurely at just 31 weeks. She had a very high-risk pregnancy, which was complex due to something they call monochorionic diamniotic twins.
That's right. So monochorionic twins, identical twins, share a single placenta. And even though each baby has its own part of that placenta, there are blood vessels that join the two together. So in effect, they share a single circulation, which does mean more complications, such as twin-twin. And anything that happens to one baby has a direct impact on the other baby.
And this could lead to complications like twin-to-twin transfusion syndrome, where there is disproportionate blood supply, where blood supply is not evenly shared between both twins. And Jesy even said it could have led to one of her daughters or both of them not making it, right? So this was something they had to treat and monitor very closely. So she had a very hard pregnancy, a scary pregnancy, but thank the Lord, the babies came out okay, they're healthy. This is something that she went out and talked about and did press and made people aware, because this is something I didn't know existed. But Jesy is engaged as of September 2025. And it really just seems like all of this is really helping heal a lot of the trauma surrounding like how she views herself. And she recently did a photo shoot with her two daughters and really reflected on, wow, like I'm sitting here in front of you guys posing on Instagram with my body out. I would have never ever done this. That essentially my daughters healed me. Like, if I could do this, why can't I love the body that I'm in? And actually, this was a big deal, not just for the message, but because Perrie liked the post. And for a lot of people, that was huge. They had not interacted. A lot of fans had no inkling what their relationship looked like after all of these years. Perrie liking this post recently was huge because nobody was really acknowledging her, you know, her life and what she was doing, and vice versa. So this felt monumental to some fans. And Perrie did recently open up in September 2025 that their friendship breakdown was like, quote, losing a limb. They talked every day, they were close, and to not have that was a harsh adjustment. And there's actually a song on her debut album, on Perrie's debut album, that is allegedly about Jesy.
I wrote a song about it. Every time I listen to it, I cry.
So let's get into Perrie. Perrie, when she was introduced and just even seeing her audition, she's been vocaling, like she's had a vocal since X Factor days. The depth, the texture, the tone, the power, all of the above. To be honest, she always kind of had a soloist voice, but she blended so well with the group. After departing with Little Mix, she signed a record deal with Columbia Records UK, while her clothing line, Dezora, launched and was only 6% of brands to sell size 18 and over. Now, she did make it clear that the brand was luxury fashion, but some fans were pissed because the prices were expensive. So there was a little controversy and drama around the release. But anyways, we also know that Perrie's love life, we talked about it, that's been on Front Street. So after the Zayn chapter closed, a couple years ago, she met her now fiance, February 2017, and he's a pro footballer named Alex Chamberlain. And she was blessed with a baby boy who was born in August 2021. And the pair also announced their engagement in June 2022, of which they are still engaged. That same year, Perrie had a very traumatic and scary experience when burglars broke into their home while she, her fiance, and her son were home. They stole some luxury items, but thank goodness everybody was safe. But she said it was a very violating experience for her. As for the music, she really began to kick off her solo career with her debut single, Forget About Us, in April 2024, which debuted at number 10 in the UK. Now, the song was initially written and demoed by Ed Sheeran, but Perrie ended up changing some things and also making her own version of the song. It's a polished pop ballad. It's nice. It's clean. And then she released another song called Tears, which I think was more my speed. And as of 2025, Perrie has candidly opened up about something that she never has before in her personal life, and it's about her miscarriages. She went through one early in a pregnancy. So this was her first time ever pregnant. She experienced one very early on. And on the We Need to Talk podcast, recently in 2025, she revealed that she experienced another miscarriage maybe less than a year after she had her son. And she experienced this one while on tour with Little Mix on the Confetti tour. And she lost the baby at 24 weeks.
And yeah, we basically lost the baby at like 24 weeks. So I think I was just traumatized. Fully like carrying in your 24 weeks and you've planned out like their room and all these things. It's really hard.
Yes.
But no, I've never spoke about it before because obviously I end up a wreck.
She's actively still working through that trauma. 2025, so this year, she kicked off the year while releasing her single Roller Coaster, and also another single, If He Wanted To, He Would, that released in August 2025. And Perrie has finally released her self-titled debut solo album, Perrie, on September 26, 2025. Perrie has been open about how hard it was to find her sound, and in reviews of this album, critics had mixed reviews. We all know Perrie has an excellent voice, great vocals, but some felt like it can sometimes translate as safe and generic. And to be honest, it read that way a little bit to me. Very polished and pop, which isn't bad if that's your taste. But when you have such a raw talent and you have a voice like that, you want to hear it a bit more raw. And I think there were moments where she kind of got there on the album, but anytime she started to kind of jump out and do something a little different, it was kind of pulled back a bit. Overall, thought the album was solid. Not necessarily my taste personally, but you know, I think this was the first step in her finding that identity, when I think Perrie in a lot of ways like really liked being in the group. I think she really liked it. I don't know how much, like, of course she wanted to do the solo thing and give it a go, but I kind of have a feeling like she likes the solo thing, but she liked Little Mix a little more. I could be wrong. Also, Perrie recently announced that she is pregnant again, so that's really exciting news. But next, we'll talk about Leigh-Ann and where she is now, her solo career. In February 2022, Leigh-Ann signed a deal with Warner Records, and for the first few years, just really focused on covers and teasing solo music. She also released her first memoir, Believe, in October 2023, one that expands more on her youth, her upbringing, and also her racial identity. That same year, she also played the character Georgia in a Christmas film called Boxing Day. That was her acting debut. And in 2023, she released her debut solo single, Don't Say Love. I really like the dance pop direction with the UK garage tinge. The song was a direct nod to Leigh-Ann feeling invisible throughout her career, right? And trying to really break out of that box. She sounds very clean, very silky on the track, very infectious. I think this was a very solid, strong debut single. Winning Musician of the Year at the Glamour Woman of the Year Awards in 2023, she ended up releasing her second single with Ira Starr called My Love, September 2023. An Afrobeats, Afro-pop record, this actually became her first entry on the US Afrobeats chart, reaching number 32, so that's a huge deal. Leigh-Ann also released a debut EP called No Hard Feelings in May 2024, which I thought was pretty good. I thought it was solid top to bottom. I gotta be very transparent. OMG, top. That should have been a hit. I don't know what happened. That should have been a hit. And also, I couldn't help but feel like on some songs like Stealin' Love, I don't know if it's just me, but in the chorus, she and Tyla tonally favor each other at moments. She embarked on her No Hard Feelings tour, which the girls pulled up and supported, and she departed from Warner Records while also partnering with Virgin Music Group to become independent. So as of today, pretty sure she's independent. And then she released her first independent single, Been a Minute, in July 2025, and a follow-up single of Burning Up. And yes, her debut album, My Ego Told Me To, was recently announced and will be out February 20th, 2026, so we will have to stay tuned. Along with her latest single that just came out, Dead and Gone, that released literally in October 17th, 2025. As for her personal life, Leigh-Ann has dated her now husband, Andre Gray, since 2016. We kind of know that their relationship was a little bit rocky and it was riddled with headlines because her husband, who we talked about, Andre Gray, had some tweets resurface on the internet. Tweets from 2012 that resurfaced in 2016 prior to Leigh-Ann meeting him. Now we know he's a football player. There were some homophobic tweets very specifically that released, and the Football Association did charge him with misconduct due to these old tweets. But it has put Leigh-Ann in a pin because there's people who feel like, hey, you've been very vocal about equality, representation, etc. These comments, the person that you're with, these comments absolutely conflict with what she has stood for. And so it's something that she really hadn't addressed, except for, I think, the Colors tweets in that 2021 documentary. Yes, the tweets were old. You guys kind of know how I feel about this. It's old. However, everybody didn't grow up as a bigot. So it does concern me a little bit when some of y'all are like teenagers tweeting stuff like that. Like, that's concerning to me. You know, it's old, but people did kind of hold Leigh-Ann a little bit accountable. And there's people still to this day who maybe don't like her or try to get her in a bind who mention that. Like, okay, but what about your husband though? In 2021, she announced she was pregnant with twin girls and gave birth in August of that year. And she and Andre got married in 2023 at a private Jamaica ceremony. So they were in Jamaica. But she's really just been enjoying motherhood and recently opened up about their strenuous schedule, that she's lucky if she sees her husband 3 times a month. He plays football in Turkey, so that's kind of a whole family dynamic. But Leigh-Ann has really, I think, been the most consistent with her solo career. And she, I think, had a clear stronghold on what she wanted her sound to be. Now, to me, with Leigh-Ann, it's a matter of her finding her uniqueness and really finding her personality through that, right? She's a pretty girl. She can sing, like she has bops, but what makes her stand out? And I think that's what her debut album is really going to tell us. So I'm looking forward to listening to her debut album. Stick around. I'll probably react to it on my Patreon. But yeah, so that's where Leigh-Ann is today. And lastly, we got to talk about Jade. Miss Jade, she's been on the rise as a solo artist, which is exciting to say, and we're going to talk about it here, but Jade gives fiery vibes. So it did not shock me when her debut single was a direct commentary on the industry. It wasn't her cowering, it was her directly addressing it. In March 2022, she signed to RCA Records UK and USA. Around this time, Jade also co-wrote a song for Neon of Twice's debut album. So don't forget, Jade is also a writer. July 2024 was Jade's official solo debut, which peaked at number 7 in the UK. In the song, Angel of My Dreams, she says it's really a love-hate letter to the industry. And it is. I suggest you guys go watch the video. Really diving into the complex relationship with the music industry, right? Like, I hate what it's done to me, but I'm grateful for where it has gotten me. And I love how the video captures that. There's like flashes of like old performances of Jade as a child, and it's flashing in between her now. Great visionary. It was theater, it was camp, it was art. She really like had something to say, and it was a very strong, solid debut. She followed it up with the single Midnight Cowboy, and honestly, Get Me in a Club. That song, infectious, absolutely infectious. And her second single, Fantasy, in October 2024. And Jade has said in the past that she was very inspired by Diana Ross, and you can see that inspo lathered all through this video. And I love like the the Carrie spoof at the end. They recently used this song in the Victoria's Secret fashion show. So that was major looks for Jade. She released It Girl while also winning Best Pop Act at the 2025 Brit Awards, as well as being nominated for Song of the Year for Angel of My Dreams. She also performed at the ceremony. That as well was theater. It was full production, full acting, singing. There's a story being told, and she does that very, very well. She's also been having her way with features, featured on a Les Seraphim song called Hot, and she also recently was a feature on Pink Panther's song Tonight, which is on her Fancy That Remix album. And she's been very consistent with her single releases. All of that, though, geared up to her debut album, That Showbiz Baby, which released in September 2025. Now, I remember when the album cover dropped, I saw a lot of fandom make edits of their faves' own pictures in the concept of this album. So her album cover caught a lot of attention. I thought it was very creative. And so again, that was really good promo for the release. And for Jade, I think the biggest thing that I could say to you guys is the vision seems very clear. And I think that's one of the biggest battles as an artist, even as a soloist when you've been in a group for so long. What's your identity? What's your sound? What are you trying to say? And she has her finger on that, right on the nose. The album, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was excellent. I thought it was great. Plastic Box was a favorite of mine. I thought that was like the perfect pop song. Midnight Cowboy, Before You Break My Heart, the pre-chorus, Lip Service, the production and glitch. Like, you know, I think that she's just very creative. And yes, she's one of them ones in this group that really needed to spread her wings because she had too much, like, she's artsy. Like, she wanted to do something a little too avant-garde for what Little Mix had built their brand to be. Now, Jade is on tour currently as of October 2025, which should run into early 2026. And yes, she does have some North American dates. She made her US late night debut on Jimmy Fallon and Late Night with Seth Meyers. So make no mistake, like, Jade is trying to promote as much as she possibly can, especially here. I think she could find an audience here. It's not too clean cut. Like, she's raw, she's real, she's honest. I think people could dig that. And Jade has vowed specifically that there will be a Little Mix reunion if it's the last thing she does. And to really round this out and conclude it, my last final word. The girls most recently snapped a picture backstage at Jade's concert. And this was 3 years after the band's hiatus was announced. So fans were so excited. And a lot of them were saying, I need y'all to come back ASAP. We need our girls together again. We need to come back. As somebody who did not really follow their journey closely, I forget that it has been a while since they announced the hiatus. So honestly, these girls gave a lot. They kind of broke the girl group curse, almost, by staying together for 10 years. That's insane. While 3 of them still remain extremely close is impressive. So in a way, it's like, do you leave a good thing where it's at? I don't think that the Little Mix reunion will happen soon, but it's not really a matter of if it will happen, but when it will happen. And I think they even said they were totally into the idea, and I could see it. I think Blackpink does this, but like still being a group, but during their tours, doing their own solo sets. So that could be something they explore if they want to come back sooner than later. But I think, you know, they're finding their superpower in being solo, and they should give themselves the time to do that. And honestly, I low-key think that they should just take, like, some of y'all just, you need a break. They've been working since 2011, nonstop, no breaks, you know? What do you guys think? Like, comment down below. That is what happened to Little Mix. This is going to be a monster of a video to edit. My apologies, I did not post last week, but that was also because I was working on this. Who do you guys want to see next in this series? Hit that sub button, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.